Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What can this slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm gonna burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump discontinues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you. This is Bettor Off Dead, college football, week 6 edition. Hoping to continue the run, man. We've been pretty good in pretty much every sport over the last week or week plus or so. The last couple of weeks have been excellent in football. I believe I'm on an 8-1 run in college football over the last 2 weeks. Toning it down a little bit this week. I'm going to give out 3 plays on the show. I know last week I had 6 because I really liked a couple of the plays on Friday, and then I had 4 more on Saturday. I've got 3 here. I've got a few that are like very close to main plays, which I'll talk about those. I'll give out those as leans as well, so you know what I'm thinking in those games, you know, the usual. Getting really selective here. Hopefully it pays off this week. But, of course, I can't continue to have, like, ridiculous weeks like this every single week, but I'm going to try. And NFL's been good the last couple of weeks as well. I think NFL is on 6-1 run over the last 2 weeks, so we'll talk about NFL tomorrow. Yeah, Charles, that's what's up, man? Yeah, the Darth Toad video, that was, yeah, and that wound up being a push, and full game would have been a winner on that. And I want to die because the Red Sox lost. Do we have anything to really talk about right now as far as today? I mean, I didn't have any plays today. My strongest lean that I had was San Jose State, and I don't know what's happening in that game. I have the West Virginia BYU game on over here right now. It looks like BYU might actually wind up covering this number. It was a low-scoring game for a while. I did say I liked the under in this game, too. Both offenses suck, but it looks like BYU's putting up some points now and making it a little bit questionable later in the game. Let's get into tomorrow, man. We're going to do what we usually do. I'm going to have a bunch of plays. We're going to talk about all the biggest games as well. If you want me to talk about some other game, we could talk about it as well. I hope the Yankees don't make it to the World Series. Obviously, I hate them, but you saw when I did my bracket special, I have the Seattle Mariners winning the whole thing, which is very anti-history. And by the way, I looked it up. I believe Seattle, San Diego, and Milwaukee, I believe, none of them have ever won the World Series before. So there is that, although Milwaukee and San Diego, San Diego's out already. So I was going to say Milwaukee and San Diego would have had to have crossed paths if they got that far. But yeah, we will see. I got all of the first round, all the wild card winners I had correct, except for the Cubs versus Padres in my bracket, which I thought was pretty much a toss-up type of series. It kind of wound up being that way. The Cubs did win, though, which I was forgetting, by the way, that I believe Charlie Kirk was a Cubs fan. Is that what I'm hearing? Or at least Erica Kirk is. So I'm like, oh, is that going to, like, is there some rigging going on where now that means the Cubs are going to win the whole thing? I don't know. Let's get into it, man. I don't want this to be 2 hours like it usually is, but we'll see, man. I'm gonna try to allow it to not be that. Kentucky and Georgia is going to be the first game we're going to talk about here on the Saturday slate. 12 noon Eastern, ABC. Georgia ranked 12th in the country. Big SEC matchup here, though, man. This is one that's very, very close to a play for me. This is one of the last ones that I left off my card, and that would be a play on Kentucky. I leaned to Kentucky in this game. I have a couple of hesitations with it, though. It looks like San Jose State is winning, by the way, right now, so I might have been correct about that. Georgia down from 20.5 with juice to 20. I don't know if it really ever touched the 21. Of course, 21, 3 touchdowns is a key number. But if you wanted to play this game, I would take the 20 or 20.5 with Kentucky here. I mean, you don't have to take it now either, really, because if it gets, you could wait to see if it does get to 21. I don't think it will. Maybe it potentially will. I mean, Georgia obviously is going to be the public side. 84% of tickets, only 61% of the cash on Georgia. Now, the one actual hesitation that I do have with this is that even though this is revenge for Kentucky, I mean, I don't think the revenge factor really matters that much because Georgia is basically always a favorite against Kentucky, and Kentucky played them very close last year. If you remember what happened last year, Georgia, I believe, had to travel to Kentucky last year, and it was the week before Georgia was going to play Alabama, or I think maybe Georgia had a bye the next week, and then they had Alabama the following week after that, but it was like basically a look-ahead spot, I think. I think Georgia kind of just got caught not really paying attention. Although I will say right now, I think look-ahead spots are less strong. It's less strong of a fade. Like, it's less strong of a factor when a team might have a look-ahead spot than it is for them to have like a letdown spot or hangover spot. So I think it's stronger to look at what the team did in the prior week because it can really affect their state, like fatigue-wise, mental state, whatever, coming into this game. Whereas the look-ahead only can cause a distraction, and it can't really cause like fatigue or anything coming into the game. You know what I mean? So I think the look ahead is a little bit less of a factor. It is still a factor, but less so. So weigh those things accordingly. But Georgia, I believe, did get caught in the look ahead spot against Kentucky last year, and Georgia still won the game, but they only won 13-12, if I'm not mistaken. So Georgia could take that both ways, man. I mean, they could remember that from last year, and because they remember that happening, it means they have to focus here and step it up because Kentucky almost caught them last year. But I think they still might not really care. And even if Georgia does show up, they just need to win the game, really. So I don't think they care about style points right now. I mean, right now they're trying to make like the SEC title game right now, and they have a loss now in the SEC. So they're going to be as focused as necessary for that. But I do think this is a bad spot for Georgia, so I would fade them if I was going to play this. And it is pretty strong, I will say. I was very much considering Kentucky here. Because, again, I don't think last year's result is going to cause Georgia to be, like, so ultra-focused here. Oh, we need to blow this team out by 20 points. No, you got to show up and win the game. But Georgia's in a difficult spot, man. I mean, they played Tennessee into overtime going into the bye. That was a big game. Georgia escaped with the win there. Then coming out of the bye, they had to play their huge game against Alabama last week, and I talked about that on last week's show. I thought Alabama was going to win the game. I was correct. So Alabama, I thought they were very much underranked coming into that game. And we know the deal with Georgia, man. It's basically like in the Kirby Smart era, even though I know they lost a couple extra games last year, but usually it's basically Georgia just beats everybody, but they lose to Alabama. I mean, that's pretty much what happens. And it happened again, but that was still a big game, man. So now they have to come off of that close 3-point loss to Alabama and that huge game that you get up for emotionally. I think it was probably the College Game Day game, I would guess. I don't even know if it was, but now they face this Kentucky team that is one of the lower teams in the SEC, really. And up next, they do have Auburn, which Auburn's more of a named team in the SEC at the very least, even though they're somewhat mediocre right now. But they were ranked, I believe, until they lost last week, only by 6 to Texas A&M, which is a game I'm going to talk about later in the show. So I do think the Auburn game is bigger, and they do have Ole Miss after that too. So in this run of like 5 games, or maybe even 6, because they have the after a bye, they have to face Florida in what is a big rivalry game as well, the world's greatest cocktail party, or whatever it's called, outdoor cocktail party. So massive tailgating game there. That's a big game too. So in this run of 6 games, basically, that we have for Georgia here, this Kentucky game I think means the least out of all of them. As far as Kentucky, they did play last week. They played pretty poorly against South Carolina, which is not good. I've been talking about how bad South Carolina is. I talked about how terrible they are on first and second down coming into this. Kentucky got blown out, though, which is not really a good sign. I mean, South Carolina's been really, really bad, actually, like worse than what the record would even indicate. And they finally had a pretty good game, although even this game, for South Carolina. It wasn't quite as good as it looked, although they did win the yardage battle by over 100. For once, South Carolina wins the yardage battle by a substantial margin, so they deserve to win the game, but Kentucky compounded how bad the game was by also losing 4 turnovers in the game. They were -4 in turnovers, so I think the result looked a little bit worse. I'm not saying Kentucky was like distracted and overlooked South Carolina, but I think maybe a little bit of a look ahead to Georgia here. It is a second straight road game for them, though, so it is a little bit of a difficult spot for Kentucky here, but definitely lean to Kentucky plus the points in that game overall, and it's close to being a play for me. I just have a few concerns about it. But that one's one of the last ones that I left off the card here, man. It was almost a 4 or even 5 play card here, and those were very close. Player props, pretty much never. It's just not my thing. Definitely not in college. I don't even think you can play player props in college, right? I think most states, I think, ban it completely, even though the NIL might change that. But, like, in the NFL, I mean, I rarely ever do it. I do it in the Super Bowl when you can really just focus on one game and you can focus on props. I think maybe very occasionally I do it in, like, some of the other NFL playoff games, but that's about it. Like when there's more focus on it. Although I know that's when you basically get the worst lines on it because the books have to focus on it too, and they have to set the lines more accordingly. They have to like make sure that their lines are good. But no, I mean, I basically don't. Iowa State, Cincinnati. This one is actually close to making my card as well. It wasn't one of my last cuts, but it was there. I just don't really see that much of a situation for it. But as far as like, this is like a pure like market read versus what the rankings makers are saying. And the rankings makers are telling you something that is completely wrong, which is that they're telling you that Iowa State is the 14th ranked team in the country. And I will tell you right now, they are not. They're not even worthy of a top 25 ranking. I mean, I know I keep saying that, but it's just true based on what the power ratings guys are doing here. You can see in the line here, the line makes no sense, right? You have Iowa State ranked 14th in the country. They're 5-0. I mean, Cincinnati's record's not that bad. Cincinnati's 3-1, and they're at home. Cincinnati flipped from a 1.5-point dog to a 1-point favorite. 59% of the cash is on Cincinnati, so the money has flipped them to the favorite, even though Iowa State is getting the public action at 56%. So that is definitely an indicator. Even just the ticket percentage versus the cash percentage alone, that's an indicator that you want to look to Cincinnati in this one. But I think the ranking disparity versus what the odds makers are telling you is a huge deal. So again, when the rankings makers are telling you something, the odds makers are telling you the opposite. You want to go with what the odds makers are saying, because the rankings makers are just moron, like beat writers, basically. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They overreact to everything. The odds makers have a ton of money on the line here, so I mean, no, I know they're not really necessarily trying to tell you who's going to win the game. They're trying to split the action. But sometimes they will take a stand on a certain game as well, knowing that the public is going to come in a certain way, and they can't skew the line that much away from like what they think is really going to happen. Like if the odds maker says this team is a favorite, and it's opposing what the rankings makers say, I do think you have to definitely take notice of that. Public's going to see this, 5-0 Iowa State, and you're getting a point or two on the road here, and they're ranked. It looks way too easy to play Iowa State when it's basically just a pick the winner situation, like at worst for Iowa State here. But what has Iowa State really done so far? They won the game in Dublin against Kansas State. Kansas State really struggled at the beginning of the season, but Kansas State outgained Iowa State in that game, and I had Kansas State in that game, if you remember. So kind of a misleading result in that one. Then Iowa State came home. I thought it was a bad spot, and yes, they did crush FCS South Dakota, but I don't know if there's really a whole lot to take away from that. They did play pretty well against Iowa, at least defensively. It was a defensive battle, as it always is. And they played fine in the game. Iowa's a pretty solid team. It was a defensive battle. I mean, it was what it was. Typical variation of that rivalry game. But then Iowa State really did not look good against Arkansas State. And you could argue, well, it was kind of a sandwich spot coming off that big Iowa game. I think I was very close to giving Arkansas State as a play in that game, I think, and they definitely covered. But Iowa State played shockingly poorly in that game, and I know they had their Big 12 home opener up next against Arizona, and they did play fairly well in the game against Arizona. Sure, they blew out Arizona, but I think it was maybe slightly misleading at the very least. If you look at the the yardage in this game, Iowa State only had a 39-yard advantage in total yards, so something else was going on in this game. Arizona did only lose the turnover battle by 1, but you look at the final score and then you look at the statistics, the final score was still misleading based on how this game played out statistically, so I still don't think Iowa State is actually that good. They're facing Cincinnati here, who's kind of a newcomer to the Big 12. I think Iowa State's just kind of like, not only whatever, but I think Iowa State also, they're not that used to traveling to Cincinnati really yet, so it's a little bit of a weird travel spot. I know they don't necessarily have a big game up next. It is Colorado. It is still Coach Prime, but really this is more of like again, it's market versus rankings as far as this game is concerned. And my hesitation on Cincinnati would be that they're coming off winning in an upset, and they haven't played anybody yet really. So Cincinnati really has played the less difficult schedule. Their most difficult game is against Nebraska. They did play pretty well. They only lost by 3. Neutral site game in Arrowhead Stadium is what that one was. But since then, Cincinnati's been lighting up the scoreboard, man. They put up a lot of offense against Bowling Green. I know it's a MAC team, but Bowling Green, their defense isn't that bad for a MAC team. Cincinnati put up 34 there. They put up 70 against Northwestern State, and then they put up a bunch of yardage against Kansas. I know it was an upset. Only a 4.5 when the game went off, so it's not like one of those massive upsets where it's like, you got to like consider that team to be in like a letdown spot or something like that after that. I don't think that's going to be the case. I mean, they went in, they beat Kansas, and again, I don't think it's going to be a letdown spot because they're playing a ranked team here at home, so it is a big deal for Cincinnati. And if you look at what they did yardage-wise in this game, I know Cincinnati's defense wasn't good. They gave up 597 yards to a Kansas offense that hasn't been that impressive. That's not good, but Cincinnati's offense has been really good. They put up 603 yards of offense against a Kansas defense that's supposed to be improved this year. So at the very least, this Cincinnati team, they can score, man. The only problem, or I guess the other problem with Cincinnati here is that I know I like the better defense more often than I don't, and that is Iowa State here. Iowa State does have the better of these two defenses, but I think Iowa State has a really deficient offense against what they're going to face here with Cincinnati. Iowa State has lost their top 2 wide receivers again. I think so. Iowa State's really depleted on their offense right now. I know they have Beck there. He's an experienced quarterback, but I don't know how much he can really do here. So I can see Iowa State struggling to keep up with Cincinnati's offense in this game. They're really going to need their defense to slow down Cincinnati, and it might not be enough. So I do think Cincinnati wins that game. Nate, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. McCorkle, yeah. McGonigal, I don't know. All right, let's keep going here, man. And I forgot to say, this is the fucking breakdown, man. I forgot to put up the graphic, as I almost always do. I mean, you know, this. I always forget something in this on this show. So that game, by the way, ESPN 2 at noon. We're still in the noon slate here. We got a lot of noon games to talk about here. And one of them is going to be one of my plays, which is the Illinois-Purdue game. So I'm going to wait on that one. On Fox at noon, we do have Wisconsin and Michigan. This game, it's on Fox. It's going to be a Big Ten matchup here. Michigan's ranked 20th in the country. Are they a little bit overrated? I don't know. Michigan still has a good defense. They're still dealing with the fact that they have a young quarterback that's not very experienced in Bryce Underwood there. Wisconsin's got some quarterback issues themselves here. Both teams, I believe, are coming out of byes, but, you know, I talk about this. When a team comes out of a bye and they went into the bye on a bad note like Wisconsin did, I think that's an advantage. I think you go into that bye and you fix shit. Because Wisconsin, they couldn't have really gotten into the bye on a worse note. They lost at home to Maryland going into the bye. And Wisconsin was a big favorite in that game, double-digit favorite, and they lost the game outright. 10.5, I think is what that number was. Yeah, so really bad performance for Wisconsin there. And they did lose to Alabama on the road the week before that. I mean, no shame in that, but... Oh, thank you, sir. It is ChatGPT, though, those graphics. So I know people make fun of the AI there. Will likes the Mariners. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, we'll talk about the baseball. And if there's any WNBA, we'll talk about it. But Wisconsin, they went into this bye on a terrible note. So I think it is a positive. I think Wisconsin, they're going to use that extra time to prepare something for Michigan here. Michigan is also coming out of a bye, but they went into the bye on a good note. They'd won 2 games in a row, and it culminated in them getting their best win so far this season at Nebraska, which I think, Nate, you're our Nebraska guy, right? So Nate is not happy about that. But Michigan got that win going into the bye. If you look at what they did in that game, Underwood really did not do well. I know Nebraska's got a good defense, but Underwood, he still has some improvement to do there, although Michigan was able to run the ball pretty well in that game with Haynes there. Yeah, Justice Haynes, was he the one who was on Georgia Tech last year? Did he transfer to Michigan? I'm not sure, because I remember Georgia Tech, I think, had Haynes King, and the running back was also Haynes. So I don't know if it was this guy or somebody else. I don't know. I lose track of where everybody goes. But Michigan went into the bye on a good note, man. And Nebraska was ranked, I believe, at the time that Michigan beat them too, I think. So that was a much bigger win, a better way to, or kind of a worse way to go into the bye, because they went into the bye on a good note. And I talk about when you go into the bye on a good note, you don't really have anything to fix because you're playing well. Now Michigan's coming out of that. They're playing this Wisconsin team. It's been down the last couple of years. And up next, they got USC, who was ranked, I believe, until last week as well. So that's a big game against USC, man. USC carries a lot of name recognition, too. So I think this is kind of a sandwich spot for Michigan to some extent here. So I like Wisconsin to cover in this one. It has not risen to the level of a play for me. Michigan's very public, 81% of tickets, 86% of the cash on them. So the cash is on them for now, at least. I don't know if that'll be the case tomorrow when the game kicks off. Michigan up from 16 to 17 with juice. So you're getting a little bit of extra value if you like the Wisconsin side, which I do. It is also one of those games with a low total, man. I know it went up a little bit from 42 to 43.5, but you're looking at two teams that can play pretty decent defense. Wisconsin's kind of gravitating more towards playing defense again. We know Michigan's defense is really good. And I talk about this when you have a really low total, you want to look towards the underdog because those points are more valuable, man, when there's going to be fewer points scored in the game. And you're getting a lot of points with Wisconsin there. So I think the only way that you can play that game, in my opinion, is to take the points with Wisconsin. Haynes transferred from Alabama. It must be a different Haynes then. Michiganistan. I like it. I'm trying to think of some joke on the fly. That's if they're harboring Osama bin Laden. All right, we got, and then the last game of the slate there, of the noon slate, I'm going to give out a play on that, which you probably already know what it's going to be. 3:30 p.m. Eastern on CBS. This almost became a play for me, man. Penn State at UCLA. This Big Ten matchup feels weird saying that still. 3-1, Penn State ranked 7th in the country still, which I think is about accurate. And I don't think Penn State should have been ranked quite as highly as they were last week. I think 7th is probably closer to accurate here, even though I thought that it's set up for Penn State to win that game, man, at home. But it's the James Franklin effect, man. He can't win big games. That's the deal. That's what it is. I mean, you don't get a much better setup than Penn State had last week. You get Oregon having to travel to your place where they're not used to playing. It's a night game, a whiteout game. Penn State, the crowd's going to be crazy drunk. I mean, I talked about it last week, you know. I think Penn State was coming out of a bye as well, so they had extra time to prepare for it. There's just no real excuse for Penn State losing that game, man, but they did, and that kind of leads to the handicap here, man. Penn State lost that game, and I talk about it. Sometimes when a team loses the first game of the season, they get their first loss of the season, sometimes that alone has a hangover effect. If you lose your first game of the season, you're not really used to losing, and then you have to play again right away. It's a little bit difficult, man, but especially when you had that huge game, and it was also a Big Ten final revenge game for Penn State in that one. So Penn State had extra motivation for that, too. They still couldn't get it done. They lost in double overtime. And when teams play multiple overtimes, man, you want to look to fade those teams for that reason as well, coming off the double overtime. And I also just mentioned a little bit earlier in the show how sometimes teams that lose a game like this are actually more fadeable the next week than the team that won, because the team that won at least has a little bit of momentum, although, yeah, it is a letdown spot. But I think the letdown spot is a bigger deal when it's like a big upset, which we're going to talk about as well on the show, in one game at least. But Penn State, I mean, that was a step-up game, and to come that close to that monumental win, it would have gotten kind of the monkey off James Franklin's back. I mean, it's ridiculous how poorly he does in these top 10 matchups or whatever. Like I don't think he's ever won one, if I'm not mistaken. Just crazy that Penn State, that Franklin can't do it, man. And he's got enough talent there at Penn State. They've loaded up on their offense this year. Same quarterback as last year, Aller, although I'm not sure how good he really is. Penn State's defense should be good as well. I mean, that was a fairly low-scoring game until it went into overtime. So the defenses actually did show up in that game. But now Penn State have to go on the road for literally their first road game of the entire season. And it's a game where they have to go to the Pacific Coast. I know it's not a late-night Pacific Coast game, because if it was, maybe it would escalate it to a play for me, man. I talk about that when an Eastern team has to go out to the Pacific Coast. It fucks with their biological clock. It's like the worst biological clock situation, because you got to play late night out there. This isn't one of those, but I think it's still a weird spot. It's a bad spot for Penn State having to go out there, man. They're not used to doing it. They haven't traveled at all this year, which makes it more difficult. And they might just overlook it. And it might be a play for me if it was a sandwich spot. If Penn State had a bigger game up next, I would probably be looking, I would maybe give out the play on UCLA in this one if they did. It's very close to a play for me, man. This one, playing on UCLA here plus the points. This one and Kentucky, I like them, man. But Penn State, yeah, I mean, they're only facing Northwestern next, so it's not really a huge look ahead. UCLA, I know they're 0-4, and the public is going to want nothing to do with them here. They haven't exactly played a totally difficult schedule. I mean, they're one, like, seriously good team I think that they played was Utah. But what did UCLA do? I talked about this last week. They fired their coach after they lost to New Mexico, and I think it gave them a spark last week, man. I think their interim coach they have there is probably better than, I forget the name of the coach they fired, but they played better at least. They were an underdog, and they played on the road at Northwestern, which is an environment they're not used to playing in. They were 6.5-point underdogs, and they covered the spread. They played better in the game. I mean, they came back. They were down 17-0. So UCLA, they could have just said fuck it again and packed it in, but no, they stayed motivated. So they gave you like a full game of effort at least, and they almost came back and won. So I think that's a good sign for UCLA that at least mentally they seem to be in better shape here. And statistically, it was a close game too. And this is Penn State coming into their play, so you know they're going to at least have motivation. It's just a matter of how much of a mismatch is this. UCLA at least does have Nico, still a quarterback there, who is used to facing good defenses at least because he was in the SEC last year. So there is something to be said there for the UCLA side. So I do lean that way. Penn State is public. They're down from 26 to 24.5. If you like it, 24 is a somewhat key number, so you can still get the plus 24.5 right now if you want to do it. 85% of tickets, only 77% of cash on Penn State, so the money is agreeing with that and fading the public Penn State side there, and the total has dropped from 50 to 48. So you got a 48 total, and you're getting 24.5 points. It looks like that's the way to go, man. I mean, if Penn State's going to cover that number, you're basically asking them to almost shut out UCLA. I mean, not quite, but close to that in the game. I mean, it could happen, but yeah, I mean, with a low total like that, again, the points wind up being worth more, and you're getting 24 and a half of them there. So I think the only way that you could play that is to take the points with UCLA. The one maybe biggest hesitation with that would be that James Franklin is known for beating up on bad teams. That's what he does. He loses all these top 10 matchups, and even when he's off of like losing some of those big games, sometimes he still gets the team motivated though, and they're able to win. Like, he's a bully. He doesn't take his foot off the gas. So that's the problem. So if Penn State does actually show up, so if you're playing UCLA, you're banking on Penn State not really showing up, which could definitely happen off of that big loss that they just had. But if they do show up, James Franklin runs up the score. That's the problem, man. With taking underdogs against him like this, he's going to probably try to run up the score if he has the opportunity to do so. He does that. He doesn't put his backups in, even though with the new NIL stuff and whatever, you don't really need to. With the new playoff format, you don't really need to run up the score as much. You don't need style points, but he still does it for whatever reason. ESPN also at 3:30. I don't know which one of these is College Game Day, by the way, so somebody can let me know which spot the College Game Day game is here. I'm not sure. It might be Is it Vandy in Alabama? No, probably not, because I think it was Alabama last week. I don't know. I don't know where the fuck they are this week. But we do have, it might be this game, Texas-Florida. I don't even know, but Florida sitting at 1-3. Everybody's making fun of Florida, man, at this point. Florida, Looks like another bad season here. Billy Napier. I mean, if Florida doesn't do something fast, Napier's going to be out of there like before the season's over, man. He's going to get his ass fired. But if they win this game against Texas, he might save his job. So I think there is motivation. I know I keep saying this with Florida, that they have motivation, and it just hasn't panned out yet. But they're still a team that's been playing some decent defense, and some of these scores, as I pointed out, have been misleading, man. Like this game against LSU, Florida outgained them in the game. Probably should have been able to win the game. They had -4 in turnovers in that game. Outgained LSU on the road. Only lost by 10 despite being -4 in turnovers. So they could have won that game. And then I did give out Florida as a play against Miami. I know they lost 26-7, but in this game, yeah, I mean, they did get outgained by quite a bit. Their offense just really, really failed in that game. But Lagway looks like he might not be totally healthy. So that's one thing that you got to be aware of coming into this game. DJ Lagway for Florida. I mean, he's supposed to be the guy after Mertz or whatever his name was got hurt. Lagway came in. He's the guy that everybody wanted. He played a little bit better towards this when he came in, I think towards the later half of last year, but he's not been playing well this year, and I don't know if he's hurt or what. But then on the other side, Texas, I mean, they're not really living up to expectations either, except their defense is really, really good. So in this game, we have two teams that are much better on defense than they are on offense. These are both defense-oriented teams. Texas may still, again, have the best defense in the country, man, here. They haven't really quite done anything yet, though, to inspire any confidence. I mean, they lost a close defensive battle at Ohio State, who might be the best team in the country, even though they have a very inexperienced quarterback there. So no real shame in that loss. And then Texas, I mean, they've really just done what they're supposed to do since then, except even though they beat San Jose State and Sam Houston State easily, that game against UTEP, I know it's an in-state little brother situation where UTEP might step up their game, but this game did not look good for Texas, man. Texas didn't really put up a whole lot of yards through the air. I think Arch Manning did not look very good. So Arch Manning, maybe he's not what he's cracked up to be, man. He has not really done anything yet as far as showing that he's one of these like top-tier quarterbacks here, man. I mean, it's not looking good for him. So that is definitely a drawback for Texas. Both of these teams are coming out of byes as far as the situation is concerned. You know, I talk about that too, though. Texas went into the bye on a good note. They won 3 games in a row. They won 55-0. Manning finally had a good performance, 309 yards against Sam Houston. He only had 114 against UTEP, and the game wasn't enough of a blowout to take him out either, so I don't think they took him out. So he's not doing well, man. Texas went into the bye, though, on a good note, so I talk about that too. They went into the bye on the good note. You don't really have anything to fix coming out of that bye. So it's going to be a little bit of a difficult spot for Texas for that reason. And it could be a look-ahead spot because they have their big Red River rivalry game next week, which is now an SEC rivalry against Oklahoma. And Oklahoma's up to 5th in the country now, so that's going to be a big deal. That's a big game, so it might be a look-ahead for Texas here as well. Florida, they got to be motivated here, man. They got to do something here. They are coming out of the bye as well, and I talk about this inverted bye situation. Florida went into the bye on a bad note, losing to LSU and Miami there. So I know those are teams that are highly ranked here. So they did, and both those games are on the road. Now they're coming out of that. They're back home. This is actually their SEC home opener here. It's a big deal for Texas. They got to get this one, man, in the swamp. I mean, it is still the swamp. The crowd's going to be crazy. Texas coming in. It's the home opener here for Florida for the SEC. So they got to get it done, man, if they're going to do anything this year. I think it's a spot where Florida's going to be more motivated. Florida's actually played the more difficult schedule, too, because they played LSU and Miami. Texas played Ohio State and basically nobody since then. So Florida's more recently battle-tested, too. So, yeah, I mean, I lean to Florida in this game. This one's actually close to a play for me as well. The money looks like it's slightly coming into Texas for now, but I don't really think that that's really the case. It looks like it might have been close to a 7. I don't know if the 7s are really out there, though, on Texas. They're down from 6.5, basically, to 5.5. The line's dropping, though, man. So, I mean, if you like Florida, I mean, it's in no man's land right now, 5.5, so maybe you could wait to see if you get a better number, but I don't think you're going to get better than, I mean, I guess you might be able to find a 6 out there still in Florida, so if you can find that, I would probably take it, whatever it is. I mean, if you're going to play it, I would probably still take the 5.5. I mean, it looks too easy to lay the points with Texas, right? You got a top 10 ranked team with Texas against a Florida team that everybody's just making fun of. The line is really, really low at 5.5 at this point. It's almost like the books are just begging you to take Texas. 64% or lay the points. 64% of tickets, 65% of the cash on Texas, though, for now. But I think come game time, you're going to see the cash percentage is not going to be on Texas anymore. I think if you're going to play the game, you got to take the points with Florida. And it is a low total, down from 43.5 to 42.5. I talked about how it's two teams that play defense and they don't really play offense. So the total is low, 42.5. But the money is coming in on the over. 51% of cash on the under, 70% of cash on the over. 51% of tickets, on the under, 70% of the cash on the over. So do with all that information what you will, but it's a low total. So if you're taking points, it's good that you have a low total there when you're taking points. And that's a decent sign for that Billy Gapier. Yeah. That sounds bad for a couple of different reasons. The alligator Alcatraz. Yeah, that's what they should start calling the swamp, man. I don't know how many illegal immigrants they house in that stadium. But also, if you're a Florida fan right now, you probably feel like you're trapped. You probably feel like you're in prison at this point. But, yeah, I think Florida's the right side in that game. ABC 3:30, number 16 Vandy, 5-0 on the season against number 10 Alabama at 3-1. This is an interesting one, man. This is a game where, me, normally I'd be like, well, I think Alabama's in a letdown spot, right? Because they just beat Georgia. Huge game. It's always one of their biggest games of the season. They beat Georgia. They did it on the road. But I'm not so sure this time, man, that the letdown spot is really the only factor here. Yes, it could be a little bit of a letdown spot, but remember what Vandy did to Alabama last year, man. Vandy went into Alabama's house last year. I think, it was at Vandy, Alabama had to go to Vandy last year, and Alabama was a 23.5 point favorite, I think, when the game went off on the road. They were definitely more than a 20-point favorite on the road last year, so remember that number. And we know Vandy upset them and beat them outright. But I believe it was a bad spot for Alabama when that happened. So if we look at the spot that was in last year, where is it? They actually had just come off beating Georgia. So it's a very similar setup, man. They beat Georgia and they lost to Vandy in the next week. So it's the same setup. It's just different venues where that was at home against Georgia. And then they had to go to Vandy. So that's crazy, man, how it sets up almost the same way. But I think that's why you maybe don't want to fade Alabama here, because they're going to remember that. That was their first loss last year. It was their most embarrassing upset loss last year. So I think because of that, they're not going to take Vandy lightly here. A lot of these Alabama players are the same. I know they have a different quarterback, Simpson. He's playing pretty well so far this year. And you should probably do okay against a Vandy defense that's actually not really that good. Vandy, their offense is really what's good. But Alabama, they have a good defense, man. Which is usually the case, but it is the case again here. I think this defense can slow Vandy down. They're going to remember what Vandy did last year, and they're facing pretty much the same Vandy offense as last year. Same Vandy team, really. Vandy brought back a lot of their players, including their quarterback, Pavia, who is really good. He's a small dude, but he goes out there and he just has a lot of he's like one of the most motivated quarterbacks that you'll see, man. He is a leader for Vandy there, but I think Alabama, because of what happened last year, I think Alabama is going to be focused on this game, man, just for that reason. So I don't really know that it's going to be a letdown spot where they're just not going to pay attention. Vandy coming into this game, they're rolling right now. They won again against Utah State last week, but they gave up 35 points. I know Utah State, they look like they're playing decently with Bronco Mendenhall there, but that's still not really that great a sign that Vandy gave up that many points, although you could argue they weren't really paying attention, and now they have to face Alabama. Maybe because they were looking ahead to Alabama, maybe they weren't paying attention. Yes, I know Vandy's been putting up some gaudy point totals here, putting up 125 points in the last two games. One was against Georgia State, though. Their defense isn't that good. Utah State's defense is still not good either. Vandy has not really played that difficult to schedule, man. South Carolina, they're really not that good, as we pointed out. And I had Vandy in that game. I gave Vandy out as a play in that game, and Vandy stomped them. And I know Sellers got injured in the game for South Carolina, but South Carolina is not as good as we thought they were, or not as good as they were ranked, I should say, back then. And Vandy did play Virginia Tech, was the other difficult opponent they faced, but they beat them up, man. They beat them easily. So that was probably, those two were their best wins, yeah, but Alabama's faced a more difficult schedule still. I mean, Alabama faced Florida State and Georgia, so Alabama is the more battle-tested team as well coming into this one. And remember, I said on the road last year, similar teams. Vandy's almost the same team. Alabama, I know they have a lesser quarterback this year, but Alabama was a 23.5-point favorite at Vandy last year, and now they're only laying 11.5 in this game. So it's like, what gives? So the line value really has to be on Alabama here, man. When I first thought about this game, I was like, oh, letdown spot for Alabama makes sense. But then you dig into this game, and I actually don't think that's what we want to do here. Again, I think you're getting a lot of value here. I mean, the fact that Alabama was 23.5-point road favorite last year, I know that line was probably too high. They lost the game outright, but 11.5 just seems really, really low here. I think the value is on Alabama. They're down from minus 13.5 to minus 11.5, 60% of tickets, 72% of the cash on Alabama. So even though Alabama is the slightly public side because they're Alabama, the money is actually coming in on Alabama too, and you're getting a little bit more value there, better number there. So I would actually lean towards laying the points with Alabama in that game. Thank you, Charles. Yeah, don't forget to give me a like here. Like, subscribe. Of course, I should say that at the top of the show. I always say it at the end. We got a lot of big games here, man, but hopefully I'm not going to talk about too many of the other games here so we can not have this video go ridiculously long. Boise at Notre Dame is pretty interesting too, man. Boise at 3-1. I mean, the only game they lost so far is that game where we saw them just play a horrendous game at South Florida, and they've won their games since then, although they haven't really played anybody. So Notre Dame's played a much more difficult schedule. Notre Dame's still ranked at 21st. Notre Dame absolutely smashed Arkansas on the road last week, and I told you I leaned to Arkansas in that game, and I was wrong. Notre Dame actually absolutely destroyed them. This Notre Dame offense playing shockingly well, even with Carr at quarterback, who I think is their replacement quarterback this year. I think he might have been one of their backups last year. This offense is moving along, man. We already knew they had a good ground game, but I think Notre Dame's defense is actually surprisingly not very good so far this year. I know they held Arkansas down. Arkansas does have a pretty capable offense there, but Notre Dame gave up a lot of points to Texas A&M and Purdue. I know Texas A&M can move the ball too, but that Purdue offense, I don't think is anything very good at all. And Notre Dame, I mean, they kind of struggled with their defense there. So this Notre Dame defense looks like it's not really as good as last year, right? Yeah, man, I mean, it's difficult to figure this game out, to be honest. This game is at Notre Dame. It's going to be a big game for Boise, but they don't usually have to travel to South Bend either. And Notre Dame, as I pointed out, they've had a difficult schedule so far. They played no FCS teams. They played Miami and Texas A&M to open the season, and both of those teams are, I think, ranked in the top 10 right now. Whether you buy those rankings or not, I think they might be both a little bit overrated right now, but those are still good teams, and Arkansas is still solid too. So Notre Dame's faced a way more difficult schedule here. So even though they have the worst record, I think we know Notre Dame's the better of these two teams. Boise, I mean, they play in a weak conference. I mean, their games have been really easy so far. South Florida's not even that good. And then they played FCS, Eastern Washington. They played Air Force and somewhat struggled in that game on the road. And then they beat App State last week. And I thought App State was in a decent spot, or I thought Boise was kind of in a bad spot, really. It was more like it, but Boise crushed them anyway. Now Boise going on the road. I mean, Boise, they got to be motivated, though, because they got to pretty much run the table at this point, man. If they want to try to make the playoff, despite having that one loss, winning against Notre Dame would be big for them. Although, of course, Notre Dame is still trying to make the playoff, too, and they can't afford to lose. So, I mean, Notre Dame, their chances might be gone because they're not in a conference. They're independent, so they might already be, I'm looking at maybe their chances are gone, but I think they still kind of think that maybe they still have it, so maybe they're still going to have motivation for that reason. But you're laying a lot of points with Notre Dame here. The total's up from the number's up from 17.5 to 21. 79% of tickets, 68% of the cash on Notre Dame. So Notre Dame's public with less of the cash on them. So the money, even though it looks like it initially drove the line up on Notre Dame, and I know it looks weird seeing a 21-point favorite that's 2-2 against a 3-1 team. So that would make you think that maybe the public wouldn't want to be on Notre Dame here, but they are because they're ranked. It's Notre Dame. Yeah, man. I mean, the market read says to take the points here with Boise. I mean, I don't know if I mean, obviously I'm not going to give it out as a play. I mean, it's tough to say that because we know Notre Dame's faced a way more difficult schedule. And because the records of the two teams are a little bit misleading. So, yeah, I mean, it's also a really high total, man. You don't usually see you're not used to having Notre Dame having a high total like that in the 60s. It's down from 63 to 62.5. Only 87% of tickets, but only 73% of cash on the over, though. So the money somewhat playing the under in that game. But we know we basically have two offenses that have looked good so far and two defenses that might not really be that good. So there's a reason why that total is that high. Yeah, I mean, I don't want anything to do with that game. That game, I don't even have a very strong opinion on it at all. Yeah, I mean, the market read is probably where you just have to default and take the points with Boise, but I really, really don't love it. Nate is only going to like it if I don't slander Nebraska. I'll talk about the Nebraska game, and you'll have to wait and see. Dude, if I just say that I have an opinion against Nebraska, though, is that enough? Does that qualify as slander, though, if I just don't think they're going to cover in a particular game or something? I don't know, man. Is that really slander? Purdue has the chicken finger attack, man. You got to worry about that. It's a solid attack. Virginia and Louisville, I'm going to talk about that game as one of my best bets. I'm going to skip a couple of these games here. Into the night slate here, we have ESPN Texas Tech, ranked 11th in the country, 4-0, going to Houston, who is 4-0. We know Houston's not as good as Texas Tech, obviously. Texas Tech, they brought in that oil money, man. I'm not joking. With the new NIL stuff, Texas Tech brought in all this money, and they stacked their team pretty much, which is why they're this good. We think of Texas Tech as this really good offensive team, and I was still kind of questioning how good their defense would be, but they look like they're pretty good on both sides of the ball here, man. This Texas Tech team, they really surprised me in their one win that really means anything, which is against Utah. They went in and they beat Utah. That was their one big win on the road at Utah. Big win, but Texas Tech, what happened, man? They went into a bye after that. And I talk about this, man. When you have a bye and you haven't even lost a game yet, that bye is not helpful because, again, what do you fix? And it's even worse because they went in on a huge win against Utah. They knocked Utah out of the rankings. Texas Tech's quarterback, Morton, I think got hurt in the game, and Hammond came in. But I think Morton is probably back in this one. And yes, I know Texas Tech's offense is really good, but again, you have nothing to fix in that bye. So I think that bye is not actually that helpful. And Houston's going to consider themselves to be a little brother in the state of Texas here. You know what? Am I going to add this as a play? Should I elevate this one to a play? Because there are a couple of extra factors here that I like with the fact that, I mean, I already was considering the fact that it was a bad bye for Texas Tech, an unhelpful bye. Houston last week, remember last week I gave out a play on Oregon State last week, and Oregon State plus the 13.5, no sweat cover there. And they almost won the game outright. They went into overtime. So, yes, I know Houston went into overtime. Houston did have to play last week, but they do at least have an extra day off because it was a Friday game. But I talked about this. I thought Houston, they were just not tested at all. It was the first time they were traveling outside of the city of Houston. So it was a really weird spot for them, having to play a late-night Pacific Coast game like that. Oregon State had the motivation to get up for it because they don't usually host games like that. Playing against a big conference team like that, too, where Oregon State no longer one of those teams. So it was a much bigger game for Oregon State, but I think because Houston was a double-digit favorite and they played bad in that game, I think they were probably already looking ahead to Texas Tech, and I think they're going to be motivated here. This is a big game for them, big ESPN game here. I'm considering giving this out as a play right now, man. Maybe I will have 4 plays here, and you'll get an early play for me, which is going to be the weakest of my plays. Charles wants me to do it. I mean, the other thing I like about this, the thing that I wasn't considering is the transitive property, right? So what I mean by that is you have a common opponent here. Both of these teams played Oregon State. Houston, again, last week went to Oregon State and they almost lost the game outright. Whereas Texas Tech, they absolutely obliterated Oregon State. And I know it was at home for Texas Tech, but even so, I mean, Texas Tech looked like the way better of the two teams there, man. People are going to take that into account too and say, oh, Texas Tech beat Oregon State by 31 points or whatever that is. And Houston only beat them by 3 and almost lost to them. So this looks really easy. Like Texas Tech should blow Houston out, right? Well, again, you're getting a lot of points with Houston here. You're going to be getting double-digit points with Houston here. They're back home. I know they haven't faced a difficult schedule, but neither is Texas Tech, really. Texas Tech, yeah, they're one step-up game. They definitely played well. They beat Utah. They did beat them on the scoreboard as well. Utah did have 4 turnovers, though. So Utah lost the turnover battle by 2 in that one. But Texas Tech did outgain them. I was surprised by that. And yes, that is a test against a good Utah defense. One of the factors here is that Houston is a solid defense. That's like the one thing they have going for them is they're a pretty good defense. I know they haven't faced any team like Texas Tech yet, though. So that's the one concern maybe with Houston is they haven't really played anybody yet. Texas Tech at least did play one good defense there in Utah, but I still think it's a pretty unhelpful bye, man. I think Houston is going to be the more motivated of these two teams. I know Houston, again, the best team they played was Colorado, I guess, which is still not good at all. Houston was only like a 5-6 point favorite in that game, and they took care of business and covered. I mean, the public's going to not want nothing to, they're going to want nothing to do with Houston here. Very public Texas Tech side. 82% of tickets, only 80% of the cash on them. They're up from 10.5 to 11.5 here. You know, this is one of the first games I looked at this week, and I did like Houston. I mean, obviously I do. I mean, that's the only way I would play this game. Man. Texas Tech betting cherry. I don't think I've given out a play in any of their games yet, right? You know what? It's a late night game, but yeah, let's do it. Nobody's gonna want this, man. And I don't know if there's any reason to even take this now. I mean, you might get a little bit of a better number tomorrow because the public's on Texas Tech, but it's kind of in no man's land. So you at least have to get 10.5 on this, obviously, because 10 is a key number in football. So as long as you get that, it's fine. But you might be able to wait and get even like 12.5, but it doesn't matter as much. I mean, I don't think it's going to get to 14 or anything like that. There you go. Houston plus 11.5. It's an early best bet in the show for me. Sneaking in a best bet there as I already handicapped every single game on the board, man, between all the FBS teams. That one just stood out to me a little bit more with that common opponent there. So, and it's obviously an anti-public play. It's not really a low total, but it's not as high as you would think. It's at 51.5, down from 52. Public is all over the over. I mean, the public sees Texas Tech scoring a ton, and they just go over in Texas Tech games. 93% of tickets on them. On the over, 96% of the cash on the over too, but the money did kind of sneak down to that 51.5, and it's juiced to the under now, and 51 is a key number, so the total's not quite as high as you would think. So basically, if you want Houston here, they got to slow down Texas Tech's offense. That's what Houston's got to do here. Texas Tech does have a good offense, a good defense as well, though, but they're more offensive than defensive. But again, yeah, it is an anti-public play. I think it's a good situational play. You're going to do it? All right. It's my least favorite of the ones I'm giving out as a play, though, obviously. And then I don't really want to talk about too many of these other games, but I will talk about these last two. One of them is going to be one of my best bets. The other is not. But ABC at 7:30, unless maybe this is the game day game at night here, because this is a big Florida matchup, man, between number 3, 4-0 Miami, and number 18, 3-1, the new revamped Florida State, which, by the way, Florida State has already scored over 200 points this year. And last year in the entire season, they only scored like 170 something. So or 180 maybe. So Florida State has already surpassed the amount of points that they scored all of last year. But is Florida State really that improved? I don't know. I mean, they're ranked 18th in the country right now, and I don't think that ranking is that far off. I think they are definitely improved. I don't really want to say it because I don't like Castellanos, their quarterback, because of what he did here at BC. I'm still not sure that I trust him, but how much do we trust Miami? I know they're at 4-0. They're ranked 3rd in the country, but I think they're overranked right now. I mean, I think Miami's probably somewhere around maybe a top 10 team. I don't think they're a top 3 team. Their defense is maybe better than you usually get out of Miami. I don't trust their coach at all, Mario Cristobal. So if you get a close game, it seems like he just makes dumb mistakes in close games, although it seems to happen more in games where the team just isn't paying attention to some weaker opponent, like that fumble that everybody remembers against Georgia Tech a few years back. As far as the schedule, Miami, I mean, they've played a somewhat decent schedule, beating Notre Dame. I know beating South Florida it was a bad spot for South Florida. I gave out Miami on the show in that one. It was an easy win on Miami laying the points there, despite the lightning delay in that game. But we know South Florida was not actually the 18th best team in the country, not even close. So that game it's not a win that is as good as it looks. And then they did beat Florida, which I actually think was a more impressive win than that USF one. But Miami is, I believe they're coming out of a bye here, right? Yeah, that Florida game was 2 weeks ago. So Miami's coming out of a bye. And again, I talk about this. They went into the bye with no losses. Sometimes that's not a good thing, man, when, again, you have nothing to fix. Like, yes, this is a big rivalry game. So, yes, both teams should show up for this. Miami is used to being the little brother, though, I think, recently in the state of Florida to both Florida and Florida State. But now Miami is actually kind of the big brother because they're ranked higher. So Florida State probably coming into this game with a chip on their shoulder after Florida State was really bad last year. And they're ranked lesser than Miami this year, too. So might be more motivation for Florida State. Miami, I think an inopportune bye because they went into that bye on a good note, beating 2 Florida teams in a row. So you have nothing to fix in the bye, even though, again, you do use the bye to prep for Florida State, but you don't really have anything to fix. Florida State here, they're coming in off that loss that we saw on Friday where they were favored at Virginia, and I gave out Virginia on the show. If you remember, I said it was a bad spot for Florida State. It was their first road game. Florida State was very highly ranked. They were in the top 10 then. Virginia, I thought, was flying under the radar. Went to 2 overtimes. That's one hesitation I do have is that Florida State played 2 overtimes while Miami had a bye. So, yes, Miami obviously does have a rest advantage here, which does concern me a little bit about Florida State. But Florida State, I mean, they at least played on Friday, so at least they have one extra day off than what they would normally have. But again, it was a 2 overtime game. It was their first loss, and I talk about how that can kind of carry over and hang you over into the next game a little bit. But this is still a big game for Florida State, man. I mean, it is their ACC home opener as well, and it is against Miami. So you know Florida State's going to show up here. I think the spot is still better for Florida State despite having to play that tough game last week, but it was still an upset loss. And you know, teams when they're highly ranked like that and they lose games that they feel like they should have won, they tend to bounce back from that and they step up and play better in the next game. So I will lean to Florida State plus the points here. The money looks like it's slightly disagreeing with that. Miami's up from 3.5 to 4 here. 55% of tickets on them, 62% of the cash on them. So the money is coming in on Miami slightly, but I disagree with it. Again, I would, if I was going to play this game, I would take the points with Florida State in that one. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have a whole lot else to say about that game there, but the money's also kind of leaning towards the under as the total's dropping 55.5 to 53.5. I think the public just sees both these teams and thinks offense, Miami and Florida State, and it might be one of those games that has more of kind of a playoff atmosphere to it because it's such a big rivalry. 83% of tickets, only 82% of the cash on the over. So under possibly worth a look in this one. I mean, Miami at least coming out of the bye. I think the bye tends to slow down the offense a little bit more and the rest helps the defense a little bit more. But Florida State defense might be a little bit banged up potentially after what happened in that last game there. They just had to play, really taxing game there. So those are my thoughts on that game. Let's see if I have any other games on the schedule that are not games that involve ranked teams and also not games that are going to be best bets for me. Let's see here. I don't know if I want to talk about a ton of these other games, man. I mean, are any of these games really that much worth? If you want my opinion on some of these games, you can shout it out, man. I usually talk about too many games, though. I guess Kansas State Baylor is kind of a big game, but I don't really know if I have an opinion on this game. I mean, these two teams should be, playing for the Big Ten here. I mean, they're both 1-1, so they're both still in the mix for the Big Ten. Baylor, I mean, they beat Oklahoma State last week. You remember I gave out Oklahoma State as a play there. I thought Baylor was kind of sandwiched in between Arizona State and Kansas State. I thought they wouldn't have full focus against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State had just fired Gundy, which I thought would be a spark. So, I mean, that was a game where we got the win on Oklahoma State. They did cover, although it got a little bit questionable at the end, but it was a cover. Baylor's coming off that, so it was kind of a lackluster game for Baylor. Maybe they were looking ahead here. They got Kansas State, although Baylor, kind of all offense for Baylor. Their defense isn't really as good. Kansas State's defense is a little bit better, but I think Kansas State does struggle to defend against the pass, and Baylor can pass, as they brought back, what's his face from last year, as I knocked some of my water bottles down. I don't think it had anything left in it. I don't think it was a spill. Sawyer Robertson, I think is his name, right? Robertson, whatever the hell his name is, for Baylor. They brought him back. Kansas State looks like the worst of the two teams right now because they're 2-3. Baylor's 3-2. This is on the road at Baylor as well. Kansas State's coming off that win over UCF. I think that's good because that kind of just gets Kansas State, it gets that monkey off their back, right? Because they didn't have any FBS wins yet. And that was another play I gave out last week on Kansas State. So that kind of got that monkey off Kansas State's back, I think. It was a decent win for them against UCF, and they played well for once in a game against an FBS team. So I think that is actually helpful to Kansas State. So I think Kansas State is probably the way I would lean in this one. Baylor's down from 6-5 here. 66% of tickets, 84% of the cash coming in on Kansas State. The money coming in that way. I mean, I still kind of prefer the better defense getting points, which I still think is Kansas State. I think both teams are kind of in spots where they should be focused here. So I think that kind of gets thrown out the window a little bit. So we'll see what happens there, man. Maybe Kansas State will come in and Waco at Baylor, in Baylor there. I mean, I've used that joke before, I think, but whatever. We do have Air Force and Navy. These are both noon games, by the way, interestingly. Kansas State and Baylor on ESPN Plus, whatever. Air Force and Navy on CBS. So they get top billing there because it's one of the Armed Forces Bowls, man, because it's all that military money. You know what I mean? But it's not the Armed Forces Bowl. That's one of the actual bowls. This is the Commander-in-Chief trophy where all the armed forces play against each other. Of course, we know Army plays Navy at the very end of the season. And Air Force plays each of them earlier in the season. But this is, I believe, the first one of those matchups this season, Air Force and Navy here. Air Force is definitely the least of the three this season. Navy, I mean, they're probably not as good as they were last year. And I do think these armed forces, military academies are taking a step down here because they can't use the NIL or the transfer portal. So will Donald Trump, will he be there? Is that what he calls himself to get people to stop saying that he has a micro penis? I don't know. I doubt that Trump will be at this game, but who knows, man? Maybe. I don't know. This is not Army Navy though. This is Air Force Navy, and nobody really gives a shit about Air Force. Space Force needs a team, by the way. Where's that? Where's the Space Force Academy? Where's their football team, man? But we know because this is this is a game between the two armed forces. We know that it's going to be a lot of triple option. It's going to be a lot of running, even though Navy does pass it a little bit more if they still are running that wing T offense that they started implementing last year with, I believe, their new coach there. And if they are, that probably is bad for Air Force because Air Force, their defense has been pretty bad, man. Their defense has not been good against the pass. They gave up a lot of points to all of their FBS opponents, and they have no wins against FBS opponents, against Utah State, Boise. And we know Boise can light it up. Hawaii can throw the ball as well. Utah State's been pretty good offensively so far as well, but all three of those teams put up at least 40 points against Air Force. So Air Force, their defense has been struggling, man. Their offense has been okay. Their defense has been awful. I think Navy does have the better defense, and Navy has played the more difficult schedule of the two, but I mean, it's kind of obvious anyway. Navy's 4-0. Actually, excuse me, Navy has not played the more difficult schedule, excuse me. I mean, at least Air Force played Boise. Navy hasn't played anybody yet, excuse me, so they haven't really been tested yet. Their best opponent was, I guess, probably UAB. I mean, that's not very good, although they played Tulsa on the road, too. I don't know, man, but Navy is still the better team. Air Force, their defense could struggle potentially a little bit more here. Even though we know Navy's not really going to pass the ball that much here. The total in this game, I know people have been talking about, like, why is this total so high for an armed forces game? Because usually it's almost automatic. Like, it used to be almost automatic to take the under in these service academy games because we know they just run the football. The total's up from 50 to 51.5. Which, again, if you like the under, 51.5 is a key number, man. 51 is a key number. And the money is coming in on the under a little bit. 52% of the cash on the over, 54% of the cash on the under. I do think it will still be an under type of game. I think you're still going to see rushing here. And Navy's defense is actually not that bad. It might be able to slow Air Force down a little bit too. And again, when you have armed forces, part of the reason, it's not just because the teams run the ball a lot, but part of the reason why the games tend to be low scoring is because both teams know how to defend against the triple option because they do it in practice all the time because the teams all run the triple option on offense. So they know how to defend against it basically more than any other team does. And they play each other every year too. So they're some of the defenses that are the most used to defending against the triple option. So that's also a reason why the teams are very familiar with each other. And they also kind of come in, don't want to make mistakes. They're disciplined. So you also tend to not have these like ridiculous turnovers in those games that wind up leading to points. Navy is a big favorite as well from 9.5 to 13.5 now. So if you like Navy, you kind of missed the boat on that one. 73% of tickets, 91% of the cash on Navy. So the money is coming in on Navy, even though they're on the public side. I think probably, even at the 13.5, I think probably if you're going to play the side, the only way to do it is really probably to still lay the points with Navy. But they haven't really played anybody yet. The under may be worth a look in that game. You call him Trunk all the time, yeah. Oh, some black lady called him Trunk during the pandemic. I might have seen that. I don't really remember, though. What else do we have here for these games here? Wake Forest and Virginia Tech is actually an interesting game that I'm going to point out. Yeah, the splasher. It was like dropping a turd in the toilet bowl there. That's how bad that joke was. Virginia Tech, I mean, we know what they did last week. I told you, man, Virginia Tech, they fired their coach after their first 3 losses, even though they lost to pretty solid teams, really, except I know South Carolina's not that good, but it's still an SEC team. They lost to Vandy. We know Vandy's been pretty good. Old Dominion, Vandy's been more than pretty good, and they're an SEC team too. Old Dominion's actually not that bad either. So Virginia Tech, yeah, they lost those games. They fired their coach, and it kind of sparked them. They were able to get the monkey off their back by beating Wofford, an FCS team. And then last week, I told you Virginia Tech, one of you guys bet on Virginia Tech last week, right? And I told you I agreed with it. Virginia Tech plus 10.5 won the game outright, 23-21 against NC State. But this could be a bad spot now for Virginia Tech because they just pulled off that upset against NC State. I know this is going to be a home game here. It is their first home ACC game. It's against Wake Forest, who tends to be kind of a doormat in the ACC. And next week, Virginia Tech does have to face the other Tech, Georgia Tech, the other Tech in the ACC. So it looks like a bit of a sandwich spot here, man, for Virginia Tech. The only thing that might keep them focused maybe is that the spark with the new coach maybe will continue a little bit, and it is still their ACC home opener, but it's a bad spot for Virginia Tech. Problem is, I think it's also a bad spot for Wake Forest. And Wake Forest, I mean, yeah, they're probably more likely to get up for this game because they get to go to Virginia Tech. It's a big game playing one of these big name teams in the ACC. Virginia Tech, a storied program and whatever. But Wake Forest, it's their first road game of the season, so I don't really want to play them in that spot when they haven't played on the road yet. Nor do I want to play them when they're coming off a game against Georgia Tech where they almost won the game. This is crazy, man. They took Georgia Tech into overtime last week. I think it was kind of a bad spot for Georgia Tech as well. Let me see real quick. Georgia Tech, no, not really. I mean, I thought they were coming off the Clemson game, but they actually beat Temple in between the two, so it wasn't exactly a terrible spot for Georgia Tech, but Wake Forest played well in this game, man, and they were an 11.5-point underdog when the game went off. The money came in on them, and Wake Forest, they had the lead in this game, man. They were winning by double digits. They were winning 20-3 in the third quarter. So Wake Forest had Georgia Tech completely on the ropes. They blew the game late. They retook the lead with 5 minutes left, and then they allowed the tying field goal in the final seconds, went into overtime, and then they lost the game in overtime. And they tried to get the win with a 2-point conversion. They tried to go for it right then in overtime, and they lost the game by 1 to Georgia Tech. That is a brutal way to lose. So it's a terrible spot for Wake Forest coming into this game too, man. So I just can't do it. I can't play either team. They're both in bad spots. Because I saw that for Wake Forest. I was like, holy crap, I want to go against Wake Forest here. But I don't think you can because Virginia Tech's also in a bad spot. And we do see the common opponent too. As we know, Virginia Tech went into NC State and beat them last week. And NC State beat Wake Forest as well. So the transitive property is going to get applied here by the public bettors here. They're going to say, well, that means Virginia Tech should win easily, right? Because Virginia Tech, I mean, they were able to beat NC State, and NC State beat Wake Forest here. So it's like it should be easy, right? Virginia Tech should win this game easily. They're only a 6-point favorite here. They're up from 5.5 to 6, but the money is actually agreeing with the Virginia Tech side here. 55% of tickets, 64% of the cash coming in on Virginia Tech. So the money is actually coming in on Virginia Tech. It's a difficult game to figure out, man. I mean, I could definitely see an over because both defenses could be a little bit tired after what we saw last week and maybe not totally focused. And when a team lacks focus, it tends to affect the defense. So I think an over maybe is worth a look here. But I don't do a lot of totals in the in college football. 79% of tickets and cash all in the over here. Total did go up from 50 to 51. So if you do like the over, key number of 51, you got to make sure you get over that at least. And not have to go over 51.5. The money is slightly coming in of Virginia Tech, and I could see the argument that Wake Forest, off of the way they lost that game and blew it against Georgia Tech, you could definitely argue that they're in the worst spot of the two against Virginia Tech here. I might not even disagree with that argument, so maybe I would actually slightly lean to Virginia Tech in that one, but it's not strong. I don't want to play either team in those spots. JC, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. You're going to DM me the video? All right, sounds good. Yes, OMG, hi to everybody. What else do we have left to talk about here besides my best bets? I mean, Washington and Maryland is just kind of an interesting game. I've heard a lot of chatter about this game and some differing opinions on this game. Washington, they played a big game last week, man, against Ohio State. You remember I said I thought it was a weird spot for Ohio State having to go out there. This Washington team has actually been pretty solid on both sides of the ball, but their offense just couldn't get anything going against Ohio State, and they wound up losing and not covering 24-6. That was a big loss, though, for them. I mean, that was a big game for them. It was their first loss of the season. And now they have to go out on the road. They didn't really play anybody prior to that. They played Colorado State, UC Davis, an FCS team there in Washington State. I know it's a rivalry game where Washington State should step it up in that game, but Washington, yeah, I mean, they hadn't really been totally tested. I think they did okay against Ohio State there. I mean, they only allowed 24 points, which isn't too bad. But after that big game, the first loss of the season, now they have to travel all the way to the East Coast for the first time this year. I know it's not the early start time, which is a little bit worse, I guess, if it was at noon, because they'd have to be playing really early with their on their biological clock time, which, again, I don't think is as bad as the late biological clock spot with the East Coast teams going out west. But Washington, having not played outside of the Pacific time zone this year, that's a difficult spot. And Washington, being new to the Big Ten last year, they did not do well when they traveled east. I think they were 0-3 straight up. So I think they did not do well in these Eastern games here, man. Maryland, the problem with Maryland is that I don't think they're in a good spot either. Maryland pulled off that upset against Wisconsin, and then they went into a bye, and they haven't lost a game yet. So I reiterate that when a team goes into a bye off of their biggest win, an upset win, in this case against Wisconsin on the road for Maryland, and then they went to the bye and they haven't lost a game yet, it's not a good spot for them either, man. Yeah, I mean, it's another one of those games where I just thought I'd point it out just how I handicapped these. It's a bad spot for both teams. In this case, the money looks like it's coming in on the under, though. 74% of tickets on the over, 62% of the cash on the over. Total drop from 53.5 to 52.5. So it doesn't look like a spot where you want to go over in this one for whatever reason. Not really sure the reasoning exactly. Washington is up from a 5.5 to a 6.5 point road favorite, though. And Maryland looks like Maryland is a public home underdog, so that's really not a team you want to be on. 61% of tickets, 55% of the cash on Maryland. Even though when I first looked at this, I thought it was a pretty bad spot for Washington. I kind of leaned towards Maryland, but with the market read looking like this, I think I kind of have to reconsider that and maybe actually lean towards Washington. Again, I've heard professionals give out opinions on both sides of this game. But when you see a public home underdog like that, it's very rare, and usually you do not want to be on that team. The public just thinking there's something there where there isn't, thinking there's value, taking this undefeated Maryland team against Washington just because Washington has one loss. So the public not sold on this Washington team here. I don't know why they'd be sold on Maryland. Maryland is not a good team. I mean, the odds makers are obviously telling you Washington is the better team. Laying a price like this, despite being on the road in an environment they're not familiar with, I mean, it looks like a spot where Washington should not be laying points like that against an undefeated team, but they are. So the odds makers, again, they're telling you Maryland is really not to be trusted here. And I do think Maryland's offense does have some weak points. I think they might have a new quarterback there. I forget what's really going on with them. But, yeah, I mean, Washington, the odds makers are telling you Washington is actually kind of on the way back up after they kind of had a difficult season last year. I think they made a bowl still last year, if I'm not mistaken. Did they? I forget. But after they were in the championship game the year before that, they obviously took a step back, losing Penix and Odunze and whatever. And I think they lost one other wide receiver too, right? I forget. Yeah, Washington, they seem to be on the rise again. They're the better team than Maryland, so that's something to consider there as well. Tower game for life, yeah. I wish we had it back, man. Biological clocks, yeah. Cappers are they're definitely tracking female athletes. That's true. The menstrual cycles, the menses. Got to take that in. Maybe I'm not taking that into account because I'm not taking it into account in my WNBA handicapping there. I'm just looking at the spots and whatever. So maybe I should be, but I'm still winning in the WNBA. So I don't know. Maybe I'd be winning harder if I was taking that into account. Any other games that are interesting here? I don't know, man. I mean, Oregon State, App State is a kind of a weird game because Oregon State, I mean, they haven't won yet. They're 0-5, but they did lose to Texas Tech, Oregon, Houston, Cal. They haven't faced any FCS teams. They haven't had an easy schedule, that's for sure. I mean, Cal's not that good, but still, Oregon State facing a pretty difficult schedule here. Easiest opponent was Fresno, and yes, they lost that game too at home. But Oregon State's coming off that game where they had a big game. As I was on them last week, as you remember, they almost pulled off the huge double-digit upset against Houston, and now they have to travel to the Eastern time zone for the first time this year. The furthest east they went this year was to Texas Tech, and they didn't do well in that game. They've been bad on the road so far, though. It was Texas Tech, Oregon. I mean, those are both really good teams. But Oregon State having to go out on the road there, yeah, I mean, it's a weird, unfamiliar spot there, unfamiliar venue for them. App State is 2-2, so the public's probably going to be on them too, though, because they're not going to play on a team that has no wins. App State has not really been battle-tested much yet, though. They lost to Southern Miss and Boise. Their only wins are against Charlotte, who's been pretty bad so far, and Lindenwood only by 7, an FCS team. That's not a good sign for App State either, so I don't know that I love the App State side either. And they did have that weird travel spot out to Boise last week, which I thought they'd play better. But my hesitation with that was that it was a weird travel spot. They don't usually have to go out to the mountain time zone like that. And now they're having to return home from that. But they might get up for it because it is a game against a former Pac-12 team in Oregon State. So it is one of the biggest name teams that they will be playing this season. But I still don't love it, man. There are no buys coming into this either, but I heard some opinions on App State in this one. They did go up from 1 to 2 on the line here. 64% of tickets, 65% of the cash. Of course, the public is going to see this, and it's pick the winner. You know they're only going to pick the team that has wins versus the team that doesn't. But I hesitate with that because, again, Oregon State has faced a more difficult schedule. But the scheduling spot is probably worse for Oregon State here, as I just pointed out. So 65% of the cash on App State. The money is slightly coming in on App State as well. That's a difficult one, man. Saab, what's up? You went 4-0. How many of our plays overlapped, man? I was 5-1, excuse me. I think, right? 5-1. I was 3-1 on Saturday and 2-0 on Friday last week. So we both really, really crushed it. I think I agreed with all 4 of your plays, if I remember correctly. And I think one of them was the same as one of mine. You're the one that had Virginia Tech, right? I pointed that out a little while ago, and I talked about Virginia Tech. I agreed with it. I didn't give it out as a play, but that was a good one as well. Brittany Griner, you're right. You can't handicap Brittany Griner, who is a man, so you can't do that same handicapping there. She's not in it anymore. She's on Atlanta. They're out of it. I think she was on Phoenix. Was she on Phoenix at one point? Maybe she wasn't. I don't even remember. She was on. Yeah, I think she was, right? I don't even remember, man. But, she had that thing where she got kidnapped by the Russian government and whatever, and then the U.S. traded an arms dealer for her, which I'm like, why did we do that? We don't want Brittany Griner back. I'd rather, I don't know. Well, I don't know, man. Maybe I'd rather have the arms dealer be in the U.S. I don't know, man. Which I'm going to start singing Fall Out Boy if I keep saying arms dealer. I am an arms dealer. I'm trying to think of some parody that I can do with the Brittany Griner thing. I don't know. Something, I don't know. I'd have to think about it. Being traded for Brittany Griner. Yeah. Oh, you were on Oklahoma State. Yeah, that's right. We both had that one. I think I've done a U cover of that, the actual Fall Out Boy song. This ain't a scene, it's an arms race. I think I have covered that. I don't know if it's still up on my Twitter, though, because I delete a lot of shit. Any of these other games really matter? I mean, I'm not going to be talking about many of these MAC games. Oh, you want Michigan State and Nebraska, right? Probably. It's a Big Ten matchup, whatever. Let's do it, even though I have to talk about my best bets. Don't want this to be another 2-hour show, man, but we're going to get through this. We'll get through the rest of it. I mean, there aren't too many other games that I really want to talk about here. This one, though, I'll talk about for Nate. And Nate he's going to give me a like for this one, I think. Do you want me to talk about the Arizona game? I forget what I even think about that game. You're laying the points with Arizona against who? I don't even remember. I don't even know who the fuck they're playing. Michigan State at Nebraska. I'm not going to do the best bet graphic yet because I'm not onto the best bets yet, except I gave out Houston already. So Saab, you missed that. I already gave out Houston as a best bet, but I'll mention that again, but you have to go back for the analysis. Michigan State at Nebraska. Nebraska's coming out of a bye. They did have their first loss, though, going into the bye. So I could see that bye going both ways, right? Because sometimes when you have a big loss like that against a good team, which was the best team Nebraska faced so far, Michigan, sometimes you come out of that and maybe you're still a little bit hungover coming out of that bye, man, because that was a big game. Even though it was a loss, it's possible that you don't really use that bye to really refocus because you don't really consider that to be a bad performance when you lose a close game to Michigan, right? And they got Michigan State here. I mean, I don't know if you're going to spend an entire bye preparing for a Michigan State team that's down, although Nebraska doesn't really have any big game up next against Maryland. Maryland we know is not good, as I just pointed out. Michigan State, though, they're in the same situation. They had a bye last week, too, and they went into it with their first loss, and they played pretty respectably on the road at USC. They covered, I think, and lost that game. So these teams are both, basically in the same spot, which is pretty weird, really. So they're both in a similar spot there. So then it kind of just comes down to which of these teams is going to use the bye better, basically, when the bye kind of comes at the same point in the season in a very similar spot where they might use that bye. They might still be hungover coming out of that bye. But Nebraska is the better of these two teams, so that's probably the way you got to look here as far as this is concerned, just because I think that's what it comes down to. It comes down to these two teams being in a similar spot. I think it comes down to the better side here. And the public's going to look at this, and I don't think they're going to want to lay points like this with Nebraska. And I know it is difficult to do because Nebraska is a defensive team. I know I'm going to throw a little bit of shade here. Oh, Nate, not finished with research. You like UNLV? I do not at all. I could talk about that game, too, if you want, if you're throwing out the games here. Oklahoma State against Arizona. I don't really have an opinion on that game one way or the other, really. I mean, I'll look at it again. I looked at it earlier, and I didn't really see much of anything. But in this game, the total's low because Nebraska is a good defense. I'm going to throw a little bit of shade. I thought Nate was saying he was going to wait until I was done with my analysis here before he decides whether to like my video or not. My only shade is that Dylan Raiola is still the Mahomes wannabe, and I still don't trust Nebraska's offense. Their defense is definitely good. The total is plummeted, though, from 54 to 49 in this one. 66% of tickets, 69% of the cash on the over, though. So money maybe coming back a little bit on the over. Maybe some conflicting opinions on the total in that one. Just maybe some buyback on the over because the total drops so much, but it's not expected to be a high-scoring game. So that's kind of the problem with laying points with Nebraska. They're up from 11.5 to 12, 70% of tickets, 72% of the cash on them. I would probably still lean that way, though, man, because Michigan State is still kind of rebuilding. I know they basically have they're in the second year with their new coach that they brought over from Oregon State, and usually the team doesn't fully coalesce until the third season with that coach, but he did bring over his guys. He brought over Childs and a couple other guys from Oregon State, so it's not like a full rebuild for Michigan State, so those guys could kind of hit the ground running, but they're still not as good of a team as Nebraska, and I think looking at that, the public kind of still looks at these teams and kind of thinks they're both decent Big Ten teams, and I think they're going to look at that number and think it's maybe a little bit high, although the public is coming in on Nebraska anyway, but it looks like more of the money is coming in on that side, so I will slightly lean to Nebraska. Florida Gators, no, I gave it out as a lean, though. That was probably it was the fourth or fifth one away from being from making my my card here. The ones that were the closest that are not going to be plays for me are Kentucky, UCLA. Oh, and then Florida. I guess Florida was third, I guess. So those are the ones. So I do agree with you on Florida, though, but I'm not gonna give it out as a play. But I don't disagree with it. Number 28 for Darren Woodson. Yeah, I mean, I've not played anything besides Little League Little League baseball and intramural, and T-ball as well back in the day, and then intramural basketball in college, which I coached as well as played, and we didn't really have numbers. We just kind of wore our own shit, basically. It was a lackluster league. Did I skip over the Oklahoma State one? Should I go back to it? Where the hell was that game? Or is it a late night game? Or later in the day, I should say. Is it a night game? Where the hell is that game? Because I was on the 4 p.m. games there. I see UNLV. Yeah, where the fuck is the Arizona game, man? Why don't I see it? It's not an afternoon game, right? What are we looking at here? Oh, there it is. It's 3 p.m. It is afternoon. All right, fine. Oklahoma State, Arizona. I know Arizona lost last week against Iowa State, which I thought they would put in a better performance. It was their first loss. So I talk about this when you have a game that you at least kind of get up for emotionally. It's a big game for you, and it's your first loss of the season. You take the first loss of the season. Sometimes that's not a good spot, man, because it can kind of hang you over a little bit. And Arizona does play BYU next, so this game is sandwiched in between two ranked teams, even though I know they didn't play well against Iowa State. I don't know that this is really a bounce-back spot here. I think they could be hung over. I mean, this is the game that means the least in this span of 4 or 5 games, really, even with Houston undefeated right now, too. So I think they might overlook Oklahoma State. So I would not agree with laying the points with Arizona here. I know Oklahoma State did cover for us against Baylor, but it's not like they had a game that was close. Like if they almost upset Baylor, I would change my tune and I would say Oklahoma State's in a really bad spot, but I don't think so. I mean, they still lost by 18 to Baylor. They almost didn't cover that number either. They weren't close to winning the game at all. But I think you might just be seeing kind of incremental improvement from Oklahoma State here. They got the new coach there. I think that will continue to cause them to be focused a little bit. So, no, I would lean to Oklahoma State in this game. The number might actually hit 21. It's up from 20 to 20 and a half. Maybe you'll see a 21 by the time the game kicks off. So that would be the best number that you could possibly get on Oklahoma State, I would say. 81% of tickets, 68% of the cash on Arizona. So Arizona is public. So again, the market is agreeing with me on taking the points with Oklahoma State there. Again, if you get 3 touchdowns, that's the key number there. Although if you're going to play it at this number, I would still lean to Oklahoma State plus the 20 and a half in that one. Not a play for me, though. Not really close to a play for me. Coaching a youth league, the moms could see that I'm actually not bad with kids. Hell yeah. They'd finally be able to see that, even though I am autistic. But I think the fact that I'm autistic, but I have enough social skills, I kind of just talk to kids like they're adults, basically, and all like, dude, I play some of the same things that kids play. I'll still play like video games and fucking like board games and shit and whatever. Like I'll do that with kids. Yeah. All right. And I got a bunch of cousins. I'm the oldest of a lot of cousins on my mom's side. So I got younger cousins. So yeah, I mean, even though I'm childless, it's not like I've had no children to deal with. And I'm an older sibling as well, though I was still really young when my sister was born. So but I'm still older than she is. Although she's way taller than I am. She quickly became tall. My dad's pretty tall. My sister's really tall. I got the short end of the stick, literally. All right, UNLV, Wyoming. I wasn't even going to talk about this game, but let's do it anyway. I do not like UNLV in this one, wherever the fuck this game is. This is on CBS Sports if you want to watch this shitty game between these Mountain West teams. UNLV, I know they're 4-0, so the public's only going to be on the 4-0 team against the 2-2 team. UNLV's only laying 3.5 points. I mean, it just looks way too easy to lay the points with UNLV in this game, so I would not do it. 59% of tickets are on UNLV, but 83% of the cash on Wyoming. So the money is coming in on Wyoming, and the total has crashed from 53 down to 48.5. So money initially drove that total way down, so it's also a low total. which means taking the points is worth more. 78% of tickets on the under, but 76% of the cash on the over. So money coming back on the over at this point. I don't know. I don't really have a feel for the total here, but Wyoming's offense definitely stinks. But I just don't think UNLV is that good. I think they're still riding what we saw from them last year. I mean, there's still a Dan Mullen team here, and how good of a coach is he really? I think we still don't know, because who have they beaten? I mean, I already said this when I gave out Miami, Ohio a couple weeks ago, which should have been a win, by the way. Miami, Ohio had the lead that whole game, and they fucking blew it and then missed by a half point. And yes, I should have just mentioned it in the middle of the week and given it out with a better number. I know we're gonna be missing a little bit of a key number in one of my plays today too, so I know it is what it is, man. The lateness of these shows where you kind of wait a little bit too long for some information to come in, but I still like my plays I'm going to give up. But UNLV, they haven't played anybody. They barely got by Idaho State in the first game against an FCS Idaho State team who I'm not sure is really even that great of an FCS team, and UNLV was a big favorite in that game, and they barely won. Then they went on the road and they beat Sam Houston, and Sam Houston couldn't even win when they were a road favorite yesterday, so that's not looking very good at all. They beat UCLA at home. I mean, it's a big win for the program, but for UNLV's program, I guess. But UCLA, they were so bad they fired their coach a week later, so how good is that win? I mean, not really. And then they beat Miami, Ohio. Miami, Ohio, I think only has one win. I mean, they've been playing pretty poorly, and I think it might be against an FCS team too. So Miami, Ohio is not exactly good. They're not even good for a MAC team. I just thought the spot was really good for them last week. I don't like this. I mean, it's a second straight road game here, but I know UNLV does have a bye in between the two, and they are coming back to their own territory here. It's not like they're not used to playing at Wyoming. It's a conference game. It's their first conference game. So, yeah, in a way, they should show up for it. But they had a bye, man. And, again, I keep talking about this. It's a bye when a team's 4-0. It's kind of an inopportune bye because, again, you don't really have that much to fix going into that bye because you've been winning. So, I know the win wasn't that impressive against Miami, Ohio, but still, they actually covered still in the game. So, I don't like it. Yeah, I don't like UNLV in that one. I do not. Wyoming, I mean, they played two teams that are more difficult than anybody UNLV faced. They lost to Utah and Colorado, right? So those two teams are both better than UNLV's best win being against UCLA. So, yeah, Wyoming's faced a more difficult schedule. I mean, Utah is a solid team. Colorado, not great, but it is still Coach Prime. I mean, they're still not horrendous. So, yeah, I mean, Wyoming, I know Wyoming's offense is very disgusting. It's difficult to want to play on this Wyoming offense here, but, I mean, they've shown some balance, at least in the last couple of games. They had an 100-yard rusher in that game at Colorado, at least, and they had a bye as well. So, both teams had byes, but Wyoming went into the bye on a losing note. So, they lost a couple of games going into the bye, and I talk about that, too. The team gets to, turn things around coming out of the bye, so it's almost making me want to play Wyoming here. I won't do it, but yeah, I mean, I would definitely lean to Wyoming in that one. You're going to skip it? Yeah, skip it. Yeah, bye. I have a Uke cover of that I think is pretty good. I think that one's still out there somewhere if you search for it. I want to see you out that door. Bye. All right. What do we have left here to talk about besides my best bets? Do I want to talk about any of these other games? Not particularly. I don't think there's anything else really to talk about. I mean, Duke against Cal. I've heard some professionals talk about this one. Duke having to go out to the West Coast for the first time this season. I mean, it's a little bit of a difficult spot having to go out there for sure. They're coming off a satisfying win, I guess, at the very least against Syracuse, although we know Syracuse isn't that good. Duke is going to be playing Georgia Tech next, so I think Duke might have a bye in between the two. They do. So they're going into a bye, then they have Georgia Tech, and then Clemson, but it is still kind of a weird spot for Duke. Although I don't think Duke is really I don't think they're quite as bad as their record looks at 3-2, because we know I talk about that Illinois game they played where Duke basically lost the game because they had 5 turnovers in the game, so I don't think Illinois is good, which is going to come up in one of my plays. I mean, Duke still does have Mensa there. He's an experienced quarterback, and they did at least put up a lot of rushing in some of these games here as well. So, I mean, Duke, I don't think they're really that bad, but it is still kind of a weird spot going out there. Cal is 4-1. I do still think Duke is the better of the two teams, though. So that kind of gives me some hesitation if you want to play Cal here. Cal hasn't really played anybody yet. I mean, their best opponent was Minnesota. Minnesota was having to travel out to the Pacific Coast, a weird spot for them. Cal got the job done in that game, but I don't know how good Cal really is. I know they went on the road, and I thought BC should have been the play in that game, and BC lost the game right near the end. So, yeah, Cal got a win there as an underdog. But they're having to travel back to the Pacific Coast from that, too, although I know they're used to it because they've had to do that. Since they've been in the ACC, they've had to make those trips. So the trip is a little bit weirder for Duke here. But Cal at 4-1, people are going to kind of look at that and think they're the better team over Duke, which I don't think they are, even though Duke is 3-2. I think Duke is the better team, and the odds makers are telling you that because Duke's the favorite. But the money is coming in on Cal. Duke down from 3.5 to 3 here. 61% of tickets on Cal. So the public is somewhat on Cal, but 78% of the cash, so the money is even more heavily on Cal here. So the money is coming in on Cal. I don't love it, though. I mean, I do think Duke is still the better team, but the odds makers are telling you that. And it is a weird enough spot that maybe the spot is a little bit worse for Duke because they do have to go out to an unfamiliar venue there. And it's one of those late night games that I talk about with the East Coast team having to go to the Pacific Coast, which they rarely do. And this is the first time they're doing that this season. It's going to be a late game on their biological clock. So, yeah, it's not exactly the best spot there for Duke. So maybe I would agree with the money there. Slight lean-to. A slight lean-to. It's a very small Native American dwelling. But yeah, slight lean to Cal in that one. Let's go. Best bets. Let's do it. Got to get it done, man. This video is going to wind up being 2 fucking hours again. Maybe not quite. But let's do it here. First one up is going to be, well, I already gave you guys Houston. So even though that's the latest one, I think, to play, I decided to make it a play earlier in the show. You can go see my analysis on that. Houston plus the points, 11.5. That's play 1. We'll really play 4, and it's my least favorite of the 4. First one up, I said we're losing a little bit of live value here, but I still think this is a play. Purdue plus 9.5. This is going to be a fade of Illinois. Illinois is ranked. Purdue is not. Purdue sucks. We all know this, but the public's only going to go one way on this, and they're going to go with Illinois. Purdue is bad. I get it. I know we could have had 10 earlier, which would have been better. I don't think you're going to get that number back, though, so I still think 9.5 is good on this one, though. I would prefer to have 10, sure, because it's the touchdown plus field goal, but we still get above a touchdown on this. 57% of tickets are on Illinois, 56% of the cash coming in on Purdue. I think Illinois has been overvalued pretty much all season because they returned most of their team from last year, but when that team overperformed last year, and I don't think they were really as good as they looked last year, how good is Illinois really? I don't think they're that good, man. And Illinois, against Purdue the last couple of years, they actually have not been very good. I know they're 4-1 this year, but I mean, what have they done so far? I mean, they beat Duke. Yeah, they beat Duke on the road, but I told you Duke had 5 turnovers in the game. I think they outgained Illinois in the game, so that was a misleading game for Illinois. Then Illinois basically was completely outclassed by Indiana, and we saw Iowa played pretty well against Indiana last week, so that's not a good-looking game. They just got absolutely wrecked by Indiana. Yes, Illinois, I was wrong about the game last week. Yes, Illinois did bounce back with a win there. And Illinois was a 7-point underdog at home against USC in that one. And yeah, Illinois got the win to get to maintain their spot in the rankings there, and they knocked USC out of the rankings. But that's a big win, man. They've now played 2 straight ranked opponents. They beat USC as an underdog in a close game, which, again, I thought USC was probably the right side in that game, and I was wrong. USC wasn't ever going to cover that, but they almost won. Illinois won the game on a late field goal right at the end of the game. If we look at what happened in the game, statistically in the game, yeah, I mean, it was close. It was close on the scoreboard, and it was close statistically, so there wasn't really any sort of outlier there as far as what happened in that game statistically. But if you look at what Illinois has done against, so that was Illinois' best game for sure. But they're coming off of that. Now they have to play Purdue, and then next week they host Ohio State. So this is a sandwich spot, man, for Illinois. I mean, that is a huge game coming up next against Ohio State. I don't know that they're going to really be looking, really focusing on Purdue here, man. And last year they beat Purdue, but it was an overtime game where they actually played like shit. Illinois did against Purdue last year. I just think Illinois is not that good, man. They were not impressive last year, really, to be honest. I mean, they didn't face that difficult of a schedule. Some of their wins were misleading. Like, I think that Nebraska one was. I think the Kansas one was. I think they were thriving on turnovers. Purdue put up 49 points against Illinois last year, man. And Illinois has a very similar team this year. It's a lot of the same guys. And they had to go to overtime. They allowed 49 to Purdue last year and beat them 50-49. And that was at Illinois, too. So what do you think Illinois is going to do on the road here? I mean, I know it's kind of, you can't really gauge that much from what happened last year, but still, I mean, I think Purdue is still going to get up for this game because it's a game against Illinois, who beat them last year, but Illinois did not play well there. And the last time Illinois went to Purdue was the previous year, and it was with these guys still. Altmaier, at least, was still there. I know he was a lot younger than 2 years ago. He's still Illinois' quarterback now, but Illinois went to Purdue that year, and they lost 44-19. So Illinois has not exactly been good against Purdue the last couple of years. And Purdue, as far as what they've been doing this year, yeah, they're 2-2. They lost to USC, so we have a transitive property situation where Purdue lost, and they actually didn't play that badly in the game. They lost 33-17. That's not that bad against USC. And I believe they might have covered. Did they cover in this one? Let me see. Yeah, 20.5-point underdog. So Purdue was a 20.5-point underdog. So you can look at that number, too, because Purdue was a 20.5-point underdog at home against USC. Illinois was a 7-point underdog. So that basically says Illinois should be 13 points better than Purdue here. So this line is about saying that, basically. So you give Purdue like a few points for home. So the line isn't really that skewed at all based on those numbers. It's about where it should be. So there's no real line value looking at those other games. But the public is obviously going to see, well, Purdue lost to USC by double digits. Illinois beat USC at home, so obviously Illinois should be able to win this game easily. Purdue also lost to Notre Dame, and they put up 30 points against Notre Dame. So I don't know. I know I talked about Notre Dame. Maybe their defense isn't that good this year, but maybe Purdue's offense isn't as bad as maybe we think it is. I don't know, man. They put up 30 against Notre Dame. That's not that bad. And then they went into a bye. So Purdue has a bye. So I think they have a big advantage here because Illinois played last week, and they pulled off a big upset last week. And they're in the sandwich spot, whereas Purdue didn't even play last week, so they had a bye to kind of recollect themselves and prepare for this game. They had an extra week off there, and they went into the bye on a bad note, losing twice. I know it was a big game against Notre Dame, and they might have covered. I think they covered that number, but still, it wasn't a very impressive performance. Did they cover? I think they did, right? Maybe they didn't. They lost by 26. What was the number in this game? No, they didn't even cover. Notre Dame covered on the minus 24.5. So, yeah, I mean, that makes it, even more of a game where I think Purdue, they're going to use the time off to try to fix some things that went wrong in those other games. I mean, I think they've, I don't know if I want to say they faced a more difficult schedule, but maybe because both teams face USC. Yeah, Illinois did face Duke in there, but Illinois has played one more game so far. So I guess Illinois is a little bit more battle-tested from that. But Notre Dame is, I think, the better team over Indiana, despite what the rankings are telling you. So, yeah, I mean, Purdue, I mean, they've been fairly battle-tested as well. But overall, yeah, we're gonna play Purdue in this one, man. I think it's a good spot to do it. I think it lines up nicely for both teams. Best bets, that's right. Next up, so Purdue, I told you these are ugly, man. You're not going to like these. You might like my last one, maybe. Next up, you're going to be thinking, what the fuck are you doing with this one? We're going to lay the points with Louisville. And you know me, I'm on a lot of underdogs usually, but I'm on two favorites this time. One of them is Louisville, minus 6.5. People are going to look at this like, what is going on with this line? This is against Virginia. So I know I had Virginia last week, and we're just going to fade them. I mean, this is the nature of the game, man. You find a good spot to play on a team like Virginia, and then they pull off that massive upset, double overtime upset. You got to look to go against that team the next week, man. So there are a lot of situations where you're going to be on a team one week and against them the next, or vice versa. Things will flip-flop, and you can kind of gauge like where the public is in both games too, which I think we're going to see more like in the NFL this week. The public was totally against Virginia last week, right? Because they were on Florida State. But when the public was totally against them one week and they kind of just misjudged it in one direction, the public overreacts to it and they come in. I think the public is actually coming into the Virginia side here. And the public overreacting like that, you know what I mean? It's kind of a gauge to use where it's like, well, why was the public so heavily against Virginia last week? And then just based on that one outcome, now they're kind of going the opposite way here. Again, it's because they overreact and the reality lies somewhere in the middle. But yeah, people are going to look at this and see a ranked Virginia team, even though I know the record is actually worse. Louisville is actually undefeated at 4-0. Virginia's 4-1, but Virginia's ranked and they're getting almost a touchdown here. It's like, well, what gives, right? Like the public's going to see that and think, it makes no sense. And come in towards the Virginia side, although we do see 53% of tickets on Louisville. So the public isn't that heavily on Virginia, but still, more of the cash is on Louisville, though. It looks like the recreational bettors are somewhat evenly split on this one. And given that I think a lot of professional bettors are on the Louisville side here, and that's factoring into that 53% of the tickets too, I think the majority of the public tickets are indeed actually on the Virginia side. But we got 65% of the cash on Louisville. They're sitting at the 7. I would probably still lay it, but I think you can get the 6.5 out there right now. I don't know if you should really wait on it. I think you should, I guess you could, because I don't think it's going to go to 7.5, but I would try to find the 6.5, obviously, because then if they win by exactly a touchdown, you win the bet. But I would still probably lay it at 7, even though I know it'll be a push if they win by 7. But I like it, man. Virginia, when you see a field storming like that, it was the biggest field storming I think I've ever seen, because Virginia has that like hill there. That was a monumental win for their program, man. Virginia, they never get to play in a primetime Friday night isolated game like that against a top 10 ranked team, and they pulled off the upset in double overtime. I think they're going to have nothing left coming out of the tank here, man. I know they have an extra day off to prepare for this, but still, that's just such a ridiculous high, emotional high, such a battle of that game. And then again, like the field storming, it's almost an automatic fade, man. When you see a team's crowd storm the field or the court in basketball, it's like almost an auto fade for me the next week. And I think that's what we're going to do here, man. And it's a situation, I like it better because the line is basically it's a kind of a misleading looking line, right? Because you see that Virginia's the better ranked team, yet they're a 6.5 point underdog. And the question is why? Part of it is because of the spot. But again, the odds makers are telling you Louisville is actually the better of these two teams here, despite what we saw Virginia do last week. So it's all of that coming into play here, man. Kind of a rankings versus odds maker disparity here, plus a really bad spot for Virginia. Again, I can't really overstate what that crowd storming looked like. The field storming last week, it was like a sea of bodies just filling the entire field. I think some people actually got injured. I don't think Squirrel White got injured, though, who was the secondary player on the last play there with that, the wide receiver, for Florida State on the last play where they were trying to score on the last play of the game to try to win the game. Squirrel White, I mean, it's such a ridiculous name, man. So many ridiculous names in football, man. But he basically got drowned by the crowd. The crowd was already running out onto the field. But just such a crazy field storming, man. Louisville, they're coming off a more lackluster performance. I know they haven't played anybody yet. So I know, you're looking at this in Virginia, they've actually played, I guess, a slightly more difficult schedule because they did play NC State on the road, but NC State doesn't look that great this year. Louisville, I know they haven't really played anybody yet. James Madison, they only beat them by 14 at home. James Madison is actually not that bad of a team, though. They're one of those better, mid-major teams. Louisville smoked Eastern Kentucky, an FCS team, and they beat Bowling Green. I almost said Boise Green is going to be the new one, like Florida, Illinois from last year, man. That's the new misspeak of mine here. But Louisville beat Bowling Green big time, and that was a game where I thought Bowling Green might try to step it up in that game, but Louisville just handled them. And Bowling Green's not one of the worst MAC teams really either. So Louisville's playing pretty well, and they're actually good on both sides of the ball, which I like here too, because Virginia, I think they got a questionable defense, man. Obviously Virginia can score, so the public's going to kind of want to be on them for that reason too, because Virginia's offense has been really good. It's been the better of these two offenses, but Louisville is the one of these teams that actually has a decent defense. So I think Louisville can slow down Virginia's offense because it's going to be one of the better defenses that Virginia has seen so far. Although I know Florida State has some defensive ability too, but Louisville's defense, I think, is flying under the radar right now. And Louisville could score on offense too. They're a pretty balanced team, man. Coming into the season, a lot of like professional bettors are talking about Louisville taking another step up this year and vying to win the ACC, which they could. That's still all in front of them right now, man. And like I said, they're coming off kind of a lackluster performance, so they went on the road to Pitt last week, and Pitt's not that good this year. Louisville was a 3.5-point favorite, so they did still cover, but they were losing the game by 10 in the middle of the game, man, and they were still losing in the fourth quarter. They tied it in the fourth quarter and then won. They had a good fourth quarter late in the game, but I think Louisville, is kind of it was a lackluster performance for them, I would say, so I think they are going to show up, especially now that Virginia has put everybody on notice about how good they are, so I think Louisville should be able to come into this game and do something. Louisville, they do have Miller Moss, by the way, who was USC's quarterback last year, so he is a highly touted quarterback at least, and he is playing pretty well so far for Louisville. He played pretty well in this game, so that's something to consider. Louisville also beat Pitt on the statistical sheet here, outgaining them by a decent margin, by whatever that is, 50-something yards. Not a huge margin, but something. Yes, I know Pitt did help them out with 5 turnovers, so yeah, Louisville probably should have won by more than 7 when they were +4 in turnovers, but even so, man, Louisville, they were the way better team in the clutch, too, on third down. I know that's a little bit of a fluke, 9 for 19, and Pitt was only 1 for 10, but yeah, I'm not going to belabor this, but I think it's a much, much better spot for Louisville, and this is their home opener in the ACC, too, so the crowd's going to be there for this one. It's on ESPN2 in the afternoon. Louisville had a couple of spots like this last year. I think they had at least one spot like this last year where I laid the points with Louisville, and it was a winner. I think against Pitt, maybe, when Pitt was coming off some big game and Pitt was a little bit overvalued. So I'm going back to the well with this one. We're laying the points with Louisville in this one. And yeah, that's about it, man. I think it is actually a little bit of a bigger game for them right now. And then we're going to finish this off with my other favorite. I know briefly there was a 14 out there on this. So the money has moved on this. We're still going to lay the points with Texas A&M here at 15.5. It's kind of in a dead number zone here once it gets to 14.5 or above. I know very briefly there was a 14 out there, so probably I should have been able to give it out back then. It looks like it opened 13.5, but I don't think I ever saw it at 13.5. I think it very quickly just started moving up. It's already up to 16, although there's not really a difference between 15 and a half and 16. So I think it's still good to lay it at anything below 17 here. I like Texas A&M in this SEC battle against Mississippi State. The public kind of likes what they've seen on Mississippi State so far, and I don't disagree. Mississippi State, as I pointed out, they were without their quarterback for a large chunk of last year, Slayton, and I think that's his name, and he is back this year. So Mississippi State is definitely playing better. Their coach has been there longer, so they're playing better. 52% of the tickets are on Mississippi State here, but 51% of the cash on A&M. We're going to lay it. I know we're getting a little bit less value here on both A&M and Purdue, but I still like it, man. Even at this number, I still think it's worthy. This is going to be on the SEC Network at night at 7:30. Public, again, they're looking at this, and they like Mississippi State because they're 4-1 so far. And Texas A&M, I know they're 4-0, but the public see double digits here and thinking that this is probably going to be a close matchup, right? Because it's an SEC matchup. But remember, Mississippi State was really bad last year. And how much has Mississippi State really improved this year? Sorry, Shapen, not Slayton. Shapen. I got that wrong. Yeah, Mississippi State has definitely improved. They have a balanced attack. They can run the ball. They play some decent defense. They can throw the ball. Their best wins so far, though, are against Arizona State at home. Was a nice upset win for them. And then that was their only good win, really. Then they played Tennessee last week, and this is basically why I'm fading them, because, yes, they did look good against Tennessee. They took Tennessee into overtime, man, but that's why I don't think they can put up the same effort here 2 weeks in a row. And it's also difficult because it's their first SEC road game of the season. Very difficult environment going to College Station, and their only other road game is against Southern Miss this year. And I know that's an in-state little brother. I know Southern Miss isn't that bad this year. They brought over all those guys from Marshall this year, but still, I think it's a difficult spot for Mississippi State here, man. Their first road game since the opening week, I think, which might have been actually in week 0. And they're coming off their first loss of the season. Again, I'm going to talk about this. When a team has their first loss this late into the season, and it's in a really emotional step-up game like that, I think they just can't put in that effort the next game after that. So I think it's a bad spot for Mississippi State for that reason. I know they're going to want to try to put in an effort here because Texas A&M is a highly ranked team, but Tennessee even kind of draws more of your attention just because their name is Tennessee. And the fact that Mississippi State did that and played them as a 7.5-point underdog into overtime, if you got the 7.5, they covered for you in this game. But that was a game. Mississippi State had the lead late in the fourth quarter. They gave up a late tying touchdown, so they actually almost had the win against Tennessee, and then Tennessee beat them in overtime. Just a brutal way to lose for Mississippi State, man. And then have to go out on the road here. Texas A&M, whether or not you think they deserve being ranked 6th in the country, which I told you I thought they would contend for the SEC this year. I don't think they're the 6th best team. I think they're probably somewhere around 10th or so, to be honest, though, legitimately. They haven't lost yet, but they're not coming out of a bye. They actually went into the bye prior to last week after the Notre Dame win, and I struggled to figure this game out last week with Texas A&M. I leaned to Texas A&M, and they did not cover against Auburn, and they looked pretty bad in a win, which I think means you're going to get focus from Texas A&M. But that was a kind of a bad spot for both teams because Texas A&M went into the bye having won all their games, and they had beaten Notre Dame going into it. So they went into the bye on a really good note. Auburn was coming off that really brutal loss at the end to Oklahoma, so it was a difficult spot for both teams coming into this game. But if you look at just the score, it's like, well, wait a minute. Texas A&M only scored 16 points. So this is the other part of this handicap, man. Mississippi State looked really good in a loss. They scored 34 points in a loss to Tennessee. So the public's going to kind of want them after that, whereas they're going to see Texas A&M only scored 16 against Auburn. What the hell is that? So this is another angle that you can look for where you have a team like Mississippi State that looked really good in a loss. And when that happens, you want to go against that team more often than not in the next game. And they're playing against a team that looked really bad in a win, Texas A&M. And I think that's the type of team you want to be on in the next week. And they were a 6.5-point favorite, and they didn't cover the number, only scoring 16 points. But if you dig into the box score here, what the hell happened in this game? Texas A&M outgained Auburn 414 to 177, and they only lost a turnover battle 1-0. So how did Texas A&M not blow them out in this game? It was statistical domination from Texas A&M in this one. So I think they were actually kind of the right side here. 21-9 in first downs, 34-25 in time of possession, basically, or 34-26, basically. So Texas A&M dominated all the main statistical categories completely. So how the fuck did they not win this game by more? I mean, it was just kind of a weird game, and you had both teams in double digits in penalties. Texas A&M 13 penalties for 119 yards, but that's obviously something you can clean up. You know, Mike Elko, I mean, you're getting him as the coach here. I think he's the better of these two coaches, the more experienced coach. You know he's going to be drilling his team after that. Like, that's way too many penalties. That's just lack of discipline, man. So they can definitely clean that up. And then Auburn had 10 penalties themselves, but not for anywhere near as many yards, 69, nice. And then the third down conversion rate was just insane in this game. Auburn was 0 for 13, and Texas A&M was 3 for 14. So both teams were horrendous on third down in the game, which is basically why neither team wound up scoring in the game. But it really held Texas A&M, their offense down as well. So, yeah, I think it's kind of a misleading-looking number here on this one, too. I think the spot sets up nicely for a focus performance from A&M here against Mississippi State. We'll lay the points in that one, and that's going to do it, man. I know we're losing a little bit of value on a couple of those. We're still going to do it. Hopefully I don't have a bad week, but someone's point shaving. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they're doing it with a razor. Maybe they're point manscaping. I don't know, man. You gotta make that look good for the ladies. But we're still doing it, man. So once again, my best bets, Purdue plus the 9.5. I wish we could get the 10. I don't think it's going to be there. If you want to wait to see if it happens, you can probably, because there's not really a difference between 9.5 and 9. But I still like it. Louisville minus 6.5. You're getting the best of that number there, I think, for the most part. On the better side of 7. Texas A&M minus a 15.5. I know the line's gotten a little bit crazy. I would have loved the 14, but whatever. I know it cost me the Miami, Ohio one. I know, I get that. You want to try to get the best number whenever you can. You want to time it the best, but I do this show late, so I give out the plays. I'm going to still recommend it as a play at this number, man. and then Houston to finish it off at plus 11.5. And then I did have a few other leans. I do like Kentucky, UCLA, Florida, plus the points in those three. And then whatever the other leans I had. Wyoming, actually, I think is actually one of the stronger leans, too, this week. So that's going to do it, man. Thank you, sir. Charles, thank you again. You're too kind. I think nobody's going to want to watch 2 hours of me ranting autistically, but I got to do the fucking Instagram videos for this, too. And I like to go to sleep after this, and then I still have to do it. But we'll see what I can do, man. I got to get this up on the audio platforms, too. Learn to Tone on Twitter. Learn to Tone on Instagram. Like, subscribe to the show here, man. I want to get more subscribers here, man. I want to blow up this channel somehow. I need a better looking backdrop, too. I got to do something. I got to be more entertaining somehow here, man, or just look more professional. I don't know, but I got the Kniga hat on again today, man. Come on. Let's go. With that, my favorite dude, although I never talk about his team, Eastern Michigan. They're playing this week. I think against Central. Or no, they played Central Michigan last week. I don't even know, man. I don't know what they're doing, but Eastern Michigan's not very good. Yeah, like, subscribe to Bettor Off Dead here on YouTube. Listen on audio. Give me a good review on audio on Apple and Spotify. That helps me out as well. Covered in Uke, the Uke channel on YouTube. Got to get that going a bit too. I want more listeners and subscribers for both. And then patreon.com/LearnToToad, and there's some bonus Uke content there. And I'll figure out what else to give the Patrons because I'm not giving anybody enough, man. So great name. Yeah, Kniga, thank you. Plus 9.5 with Eastern Michigan. I have no clue, man. If you want me to look at that game real quick, I looked at it earlier and I was just like, I have no idea. The money is agreeing with you pretty significantly, by the way. That's against Buffalo in this MAC game in the afternoon. 60% of tickets on Buffalo. 76% of the cash, though, coming out on Eastern Michigan. And then numbers all the way up from 7.5 to 9. You might even be, I don't know, 9.5. You might be able to get a 10 on this, too. I don't know. But yeah, the money's agreeing with you. I don't really have an opinion on this game, though, other than, yeah, I would agree with the market read, but I don't know anything else. Buffalo, they're coming off a game against UConn. I think that was a close line in that game. Don't really have much to say about the situation here, man. Buffalo is 2-3. Their best opponent was Minnesota, and they did hold their own in that game against Minnesota. At least they only lost by 13. Not too bad. Eastern Michigan played Kentucky, so they're a little bit battle-tested in that regard, but they lost pretty badly in that game. So I don't know, man. And they did have a big rivalry game last week, though, and lost. That was their Central Michigan game that they lost last week, and it's a second road game in a row. So I don't know. I don't love how that sets up for Eastern Michigan, but the market is agreeing with you pretty strongly, so I'm not really going to disagree with a strong market read like that, but I just don't really see, a really strong case for it. So those are my thoughts on that, but I don't really disagree with it. That's going to do it, man. I'll be back in the morning. We got playoff baseball for the most part to talk about. It'll be a short morning show this time. And then there might be WNBA. I don't even know what happened to the WNBA tonight. I don't know if they're playing 2 days in a row, or I think they might not be. I think they usually have a day off in between the two, even though they're staying in Vegas, I think, for the first two. So I don't know, whatever it is. So it'll probably just be baseball. It'll be a short show and late market reads probably for college. That's going to do it for now. Peace, guys.